will be built with British workers on labour site labouring. I'll bring you the details shortly.
We'll see about that. Labour divided. The government blocks anyone coming to the UK illegally by small boats from ever becoming a British citizen. But it's caused quite a stink in the Labour Party.
And human rights laws being exploited. A Nigerian migrant woman was given the right to stay in Britain because she joined a terror group after previously failing to claim asylum 8 times.
And the economy grew. GDP figures have risen by 0.1%. The Tory Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride reacted this way on GB News.
We're looking at an economy that is really just not going anywhere at all from a government that promised growth.
And a victory for Nottingham families. The Prime Minister has announced that a judge-led public inquiry will be held within weeks into the Nottingham stabbing attack in 2023. The father of Grace Mali Kumar, Dr. Sanjay Kumar, had this to say.
We couldn't be more delighted. I think for the nation it's a great day because everyone who's also suffered the way we have, we will make sure that changes come.
Britain's speeding drivers. Nearly half of all police forces have catch drivers doing more than 90 miles an hour in 30-mile-an-hour speed limits. Do you feel safe on our roads? How are they going to guarantee there will be British workers?
Building the houses.
How are they going to guarantee it?
I don't know. That sounds like something you just can't guarantee. You can't make...
Gordon Brown famously, when he was Prime Minister,
like
said British jobs for British workers are a very noble aspiration, but I'm just not sure. Have we got enough trained builders, people who know how to mix cement and hod carriers? It's a pretty skilled job.
Yeah, it really is. Right, to get in touch with us this morning, we'd love to hear from you. gbnews.com/you'll say. First, though, here's Sam Francis with your news.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom. 33 minutes past 9. Well, the top story this hour. Figures released this morning have shown the economy here in the UK unexpectedly grew at the end of last year, but GDP per head still fell. Growth between October and December last year was 0.1%. That is better than expected after stagnation in the previous 3 months. The data compiled by the Office for National Statistics is, though, still subject to revision. Well, the Chancellor this morning has pledged to go further and faster with her plan to put more money in people's pockets. But the Conservatives accuse the government of killing growth. Well, let's take a quick listen then to what Rachel Reeves had to say about those figures earlier today.
The growth numbers have come in higher than many expected, but I'm still not satisfied with the level of growth that our economy is achieving, and that's why I am determined to go further and faster in delivering the economic growth and the improvements in living standards that our country deserves.
The Defence Secretary says there will be no talks about Ukraine without Ukraine, as John Healey insists Kyiv must be in the strongest position possible to negotiate. NATO's new Secretary-General also says any peace deal must prevent Russia from trying to seize more land in the future. It follows Donald Trump claiming he and Vladimir Putin had agreed to start talks on ending the war immediately. Let's take a listen to what Donald Trump had to say.
We'll see what that means. I think when the war ends, one thing he was very strong about, if it ends, he wants it to end. And that's President Putin said that. He wants it to end. He doesn't want to end it and then go back to fighting 6 months later. We talked about the possibility, I mentioned it, of a ceasefire so we can stop the killing. And I think we'll probably end up at some point getting a ceasefire in the not too distant future. President Putin wants to have peace now, and that's good. And he didn't want to have peace with Biden.
Was that conversation with...
In other news, 2 men accused of attacking police at Manchester Airport are set to appear in court today after a video of the incident went viral. 20-year-old Mohammed Amaz faces multiple charges, including causing actual bodily harm to 2 officers and assaulting a member of the public. His brother, 25-year-old Mohammed Ahmad, is charged with injuring a male officer during the brawl at Terminal 2. A female officer suffered a broken nose at the time, and 2 officers remain under investigation for potential misconduct. The brothers both deny the allegations and say they feel betrayed by the police watchdog and prosecutors. And Sir Keir Starmer has promised the largest house building programme since the post-war era, with dozens of new towns built by British workers. More than 100 locations are being considered, each with at least 10,000 homes, as he vows to take on the NIMBYs and the blockers, he says. The plans, he claims, were inspired by King Charles' work on sustainable town of Nansildon in Cornwall, which he visited on Monday. The move, though, has raised concerns about dragging the King into politics just days before an announcement on building beautiful communities. But the Prime Minister insists he doesn't want to involve the monarch, only to deliver homes that give people security and stability. And apologies if you live in that town. I will learn the name and get it right the next time. Those are the latest headlines. Have a very good morning. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Very good morning. Welcome to Britain's Newsroom. Andrew and Bev here with you until midday. Thank you for joining us this morning. gbnews.com/your say to tell us everything that you want to get off your chest this morning.
So I wonder, if you live in an area which has a low traffic neighbourhood...
I do.
Basically, it's when the council says you can only go 20 miles an hour or even less.
And it's also the fact that there are blockages on the road so that, you know, you can, only if you have a certain residence permit, you can go there, that kind of thing. All these measures.
And they cause all the traffic disruption on either side. And in some parts of the country, they've been removed because there's so many objections. So, let's take you to the London Borough of Lambeth, Labour-controlled. The local MP is Steve Reed. Our Environment Secretary has only visited one farm since the general election. They had a public meeting with residents, did some of the councillors, to say, you're getting a low traffic neighbourhood, an LTN. There was a furious reaction, as people are entitled to have, which reduced some of the councillors, our local leaders, years. So what's the result? They get a letter from their head of transport strategy and programmes to all the council officers who attended saying, following Saturday's event and the horrid time that was had by all, I wanted to offer you all a free day of wellbeing leave. They got a free day off. Who pays for council tax? Who pays for council employees' wages? The council taxpayers. What a flipping scandal. What has happened to this country?
They get a day off for stress. And this is so the West Dulwich Action Group, they are vehemently opposed to the council's low traffic neighbourhood initiative. And of course, remember, one of the parts of this is that if you have a vehicle over a certain age, you can't take it in those areas. So you have to sell your work van or whatever it is and upgrade your vehicle. If you disobey these particular rules, there are cameras watching you and surveilling you, and you will get a ticket and you will get a fine. These LTNs are incredibly controversial and they can be very, very difficult for people, families, individuals, work people. So no doubt tensions run high. But if you're working on the council, you have to be able to surely cope with people whose tensions run high.
Yeah, because this would be presumably some local traders who say this is going to really affect our business. And they're not very popular, low traffic neighbourhoods. And there's also a great debate as to whether they even work.
That's right.
In cutting carbon emissions and all that. But a whole day off. If you live in that borough, or if you even live in a low traffic neighbourhood, you should tell us what you think about it. Yeah,
I'd love to hear from you, actually. Because if this West Dulwich Action Group is the first campaign group to force the removal of an LTN through the court system, then it will set a precedent for everybody, and not just London-based. These LTNs are all across the country now, and they aren't necessarily in the interest of the residents.
And just in case you think we're exaggerating, the Times has reported this story, this all came out in court. This has all gone to court, where it's revealed in court that these poor, overstressed council officers got a free day off.
It's quite stressful working with you sometimes. Can I... I'm sure you feel the same way. Can I ask for a day off?
You have a week off. Take the year.
Right, moving on. Sir Keir Starmer has promised the largest house building programme since the post-war era, with dozens of new towns built by British workers.
More than 100 possible locations have been suggested for these dozen new towns, each with the potential for 10,000 or more homes, because he says he's going to take on the NIMBYs. Those are the people who say, not in my backyard. and the blockers.
Right, so let's speak to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, now, who joins us from Downing Street. Morning, Catherine. So, a good news story, largely. We need more houses. We need people to be building houses.
It won't be good news if you live next door to where the new house is going to be, and very nice greenbelt land,
well,
let me tell you.
This is true. What detail do we know, Catherine, about these proposals?
Yes, good morning, both. Well, this is part of the government's quest for growth, isn't it? Of course, they've had precious little of it with those pretty lacklustre GDP figures just out this morning. So build, baby, build, the PM said last week, obviously channeling Donald Trump, who said drill, baby, drill. So this is an announcement saying there's going to be at least a dozen new towns that are going to be under construction within this parliament. There's applications from 100 different areas. They'll have homes for at least 10,000 people. They will need, of course, the infrastructure in terms of schools, doctors and so on to go with those. Now, the Prime Minister has made it clear that he wants them to look nice. They've dropped the sort of beauty requirement that the last government had, but he's been inspired by this visit on Monday with the King to a village in Cornwall. Wants them to look lovely, taking inspiration from sort of Georgian town houses, Edwardian mansion blocks, wants colour, wants variation. Says that these houses he wants to be built by British workers because, of course, the government, as well as promising growth, as well as promising 1.5 million new homes, have promised to get net migration down. And we know that previously, many workers in the trades have come from overseas because we simply haven't trained enough of our own. Now, I'm old enough to remember Gordon Brown saying British jobs for British workers, but the fact is, we've had a massive focus on kids going to university, huge numbers of graduates coming out with tons of debt without the graduate jobs being there, but we have not had the focus on training people as plumbers, as electricians, as builders, as construction workers. So the Prime Minister is saying that we've got to get the construction workers we need trained up. He says he wants to put the onus on developers, basically make it a conditional. If we give you a big contract for thousands of homes, you've got to train people up. All that, of course, much easier said than done and going to take a lot of time, I suspect.
OK, thank you, Catherine.
Just before Catherine goes, the elephant in the room, Catherine, is where are they going to be?
Well, we simply don't know at the moment. I suspect most of them will ultimately be in the south and southeast because it will be about demand. But we're told that applications have come from all over the country. And talking about the rest of the country, I was up in Scunthorpe yesterday where Heathrow are championing British steel. They're expanding Heathrow terminals 2 and 5. That's starting this year. They're going to be using a lot of British steel. They want to tell us that their plans are not all about London and the southeast of England.
Right, Catherine, that's Catherine Forster, our political correspondent in Downing Street. It's great that they use British steel because one of the concerns about the HS2, if and when it ever gets built, was that it was using Chinese steel. And remember, the President of the United States is putting sanctions on steel imports.
That's right.
The United States is our second biggest market.
Yeah. So we do need building projects to be happening here to use our own steel. Let's see what you've been saying at home. Darren says, I love you guys. Great job, Andrew and Bev. You are a breath of fresh air in the morning. Thank you very much. Mark says, the homes will be for migrants, but local workers will be the people building them. Just watch.
Well, and you see, this is the thing that really gets on my nerves when Angela Rayner talks about it's going to be massive expansion, 1.5 million new homes. Why don't they concede that will barely cover the number of people coming into this country? The population is predicted to rise by 5 million by 2032. 5 million, which is 10 million coming in.
We need
5 million leaving.
We need both, don't we?
1.5 million won't cover the migrants coming in.
We need some lovely, good quality houses, which should have, and you know, I genuinely believe that every new house built now should be a kind of climate positive house, if you want to call it that. Not necessarily because to save the planet, it might do that as a happy consequence, but also so that people have very low electricity bills. Yeah. So every house that's built should have solar panels on the roof, it should be insulated, it should probably have an air source heat pump from day one, so that people have very low bills. I'm a big fan of that. I bet they won't be. They'll be old-fashioned brick
Yeah,
houses with no insulation.
Insulation is really important.
It's absolutely critical. Right, keep your messages coming this morning. A lot of people agreeing here that we need these houses, but we need to also watch our immigration numbers, and then we won't have so much need to build on our greenbelt.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of it will be on greenbelt.
It will. Still to come. With one driver in South Yorkshire
Amazing.
topping 122 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. Do you feel safe on your roads? First, though, if you want some winter sun, don't we all? Here's the forecast for some of our top European holiday destinations.
I hope it doesn't rain.
Don't worry about it.
It'll spoil our holiday.
Relax, we're totally covered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
We have some heavy thundery rain affecting eastern parts of the Mediterranean at the moment. Meanwhile, there is also a band of rain pushing in from the west tomorrow, affecting parts of Madeira later on and pushing into the far west of Spain and Portugal as well. Also some hefty rain affecting Italy, but it's around the Adriatic coastline where we're going to have some heavy thundery downpours, even some significant snow for Croatia in particular, with 10 to 20 centimetres even to lower levels. Elsewhere, a mostly fine story.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Now, we're going to introduce you to Liam Wildish. Liam, well, I'd like to think he's a friend of mine because I follow him on Instagram, on TikTok there as well.
You're a big fan, aren't you?
Big fan, because there's what he does. He's a cleaner. He cleans signs. But the thing is, he's not employed by councils or whatever. He does this voluntarily. And you sort of think to yourself, well, who cleans these signs? Why have these signs been allowed to get into this terrible state of disrepair and filthiness?
So basically, long story short, about 6 years ago, I used to be a window cleaner. In the community where I lived, I noticed all of the road signs were filthy, and I was perfectly equipped to clean them. So basically, I cleaned the road signs as a bit of a thank you to the community and sort of make a little bit of awareness of my window cleaning business at the time. Yeah. Sort of cleans up the area, makes the road safer, and that's kind of how that started. And people found it like a really satisfying sort of approach. So that sort of led on to today of a video in cleaning the dirty road signs and making sort of satisfying content with it as well.
What is the equipment? What have we got here?
So this is a water-fed pole system connected to a backpack, which is what feeds the water through the end of the brush there. It's perfectly equipped to basically remove this green dirty, it's like a mildew build-up that you get on the signs. Yeah. As you can see, this is like extremely effective at removing so.
So GB News viewers, if they spot a particularly grisly sign in their area, then they can get in touch.
They can do, yeah.
And Liam Wildish, the sign guy, can sort you out.
If you find Liam, the sign guy, online, drop me a message, let me know, and I'll add you to my list of places.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Now, as you know at home, if you're regular viewers, Andrew and I sometimes get the giggles, and most of the time you laugh along with us. But yesterday we found something funny between us, which led to a very poorly timed outbreak of laughter, and for that we are extremely sorry. We genuinely didn't mean to upset any of you, and you let us know how you felt.
Certainly did.
And we listened.
On the show, we brought you the story, that harrowing story of Mel Clements, whose dog, Chihuahua dog, went missing 10 months ago. She's gone to extraordinary lengths to find Piglet. We are very much hope she does so. After the interview, I shared a private joke with Bev while we were still on air about her nickname from her partner, which is the same as the dog's name. I said, thinking I was being funny, he wouldn't pay £2 to search you, let alone 22,000, which is what Mel has spent.
So we're very sorry.
Which is when we started to laugh.
Now, pet theft, of course, is a very serious issue. Reports of it arising all the time, and almost 5,000 dogs, more than 20,000 cats, were reported missing between January 23 and June 24.
So we want to show you the story of what happened in the hope that you, the GB News viewers, can help find Piglet. Pet detective Colin Butcher has all the details, and let's hope he finds him.
This incident took place on Thursday the 28th of March 2024, and at the time Piglet was on a small canal boat moored at Copper Mill Lock on the Grand Union Canal. Piglet had been in the barge for approximately 2 hours when a thief broke in order to steal an electric scooter. In a wild panic after hearing the smashing glass, we believe Piglet jumped off the boat and took off along the canal towpath. When Mel arrived back at the boat and saw the damage and realising Piglet was missing, she decided to head along the towpath in the opposite direction she had come, believing that's the route that Piglet had taken. After approximately 10 to 15 minutes, Mel says she met a cyclist coming the opposite direction, a man who gave his name as Matt, and on seeing Mel's distressed state, he said to her that he had just seen Piglet running off in the opposite direction and had chased Piglet on his bike, but Piglet had eventually bolted under some gates near some waterworks, and the man said he could not get to Piglet. He then offered to show Mel exactly where he'd last seen her dog, and the two of them set off on foot to this location. On arriving at the gates, Mel searched for hours, but we couldn't find a single sign of Piglet. And that's because we believe Piglet was never there. We'd like to speak to Matt. He's a person of interest for our investigation. Do you know who he is? He's described as being in his late 20s, slim, about 5'8", pale complexion with fair hair. He was wearing a rucksack on his back and claimed that he cycled along the towpath every single day. And Mel recalls he may have had a stammer or a stutter. Do you know who he is? Please get in touch if you do. The Cold Case Review has revealed that whilst Mel was searching around the compound looking for Piglet, he was in fact over a mile away on the opposite side of the canal. We have recently interviewed two witnesses. They state that at 5:30 p.m. they were walking down Park Lane with their dog and they saw Piglet emerge from the gates on Royal Quay, which is right next to the bridge on Park Lane. So they followed him until he turned left into Shelley Lane.
Let me tell you about Piglet. He's my boy, he's the love of my life, he's my reason for being. The help I need is people to look out for Piglet. Somebody must know something. Anything, the smallest bit of information could be relevant. Please come forward. Help me find Piglet.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm here with your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. You may actually see a bit of sunshine today with a greater chance of some cloud breaks compared to recent days, but there will be a few showers around. The showers don't look particularly heavy and most of us will actually avoid these, so staying largely dry, and like I said, there will be some sunny breaks, especially across northern western parts of Scotland, western parts of Wales, but even elsewhere some breaks in the cloud are possible. Towards the southwest we are going to see the cloud actually increasing here and the winds picking up later as well. But otherwise, temperatures, well, still a bit disappointing for the time of year, and if you are stuck under that stubborn cloud, then it is going to feel chilly indeed. Later on, and as we go through this evening, like I said, some clearer skies through the daytime across parts of Scotland, and these will lead to a largely clear start to the night, and where we get clear skies overnight, a frost quite likely to form. So turning quite quickly chilly here. Meanwhile, where the cloud lingers across parts of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern England, it is going to stay that little bit milder for a little while yet, but some clear breaks are going to develop as we go through the night. Meanwhile, towards the southwest, the Isles of Scilly, the tip of Cornwall, we are going to see some rain pushing its way in. Then overnight, that rain towards the southwest pushes across parts of Cornwall and Devon and also into Northern Ireland. Could see some freezing rain, a bit of snow in association with this. Otherwise, and away from eastern coastal parts, there will be some clearer skies than we've seen through recent nights, so greater chance of temperatures dropping below freezing, and so a greater chance of us waking up to a bit of frost, even some patches of fog or freezing fog first thing tomorrow morning. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, and a bit wet across parts of Northern Ireland, still a bit of hill snow and some freezing rain possible. Also increasing amounts of cloud and rain across parts of Wales and the southwest of England. Some cloud lingering across the far east of England and Scotland too, but in between we have some brighter and drier and sunnier weather to be had. That being said, temperatures not rising a huge amount, so still feeling chilly. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In the Highland, the A9 is closed in both directions past Aviemore after a lorry caught fire earlier. There's some disruption to Calmac, Outer Hebrides and Firth of Clyde sailings because of poor weather conditions. On the M6 in Cheshire, there's a lane closed northbound as someone's broken down between junctions 18 and 19 from the Middlewich and Holmes Chapel turn to Knutsford. In Northamptonshire, the A14 is closed each way between junctions 10 and 11 between Burton Latimer and Cranford St John because of a medical emergency. There are queues from junction 12 at Islip and long delays on the A6, A510 and A45 as you divert. The M11 in Essex is blocked southbound by an accident between junctions 9 and 8 from the A11 to the Bishop Stortford Stansted Airport turn, causing delays, then closed southbound from junction 8 at Stansted to 7A north of Harlow, and there's disruption to some flights to and from Belgium because of industrial action there. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
We're doubling your chances to win in our latest Great British giveaway with 2 fabulous prize bundles up for grabs. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16 along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. And the best news is 2 lucky winners are going to win. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the
because
failure is...
You're
the failure
deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Morning, 10 a.m, Thursday the 13th of February, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
And some breaking news coming out of Munich. A car has driven into a group of people just a day ahead of the Munich Security Conference. We'll bring you the latest when we get it.
Yeah. Build, baby, build. The Prime Minister has unveiled plans for 12 new towns after taking inspiration from the King in Cornwall earlier this week.
Labour divided. The government blocks, they say, anyone coming to the UK illegally by small boats from ever becoming British citizens. But it's caused a big split in the Labour Party.
And the economy has grown, albeit only slightly. GDP figures show a rise of 0.1%. Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride spoke to GB News this morning.
We're looking at an economy that is really just not going anywhere at all from a government that promised growth, growth, growth.
And the Ukraine war breakthrough. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, held talks with President Putin and Zelensky as he tries to end the conflict.
And I think we're on the way to getting peace. I think President Putin wants peace and President Zelensky wants peace, and I want peace. I just want to see people stop getting killed.
And Britain's speeding driver problem. Nearly half of all police forces have caught drivers doing more than 90 miles an hour on 30-mile-an-hour roads. Do you feel safe in your car?
Blimey now, 90 miles an hour. One car was recorded 122 miles an hour in the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. Even if it's at 3 in the morning,
Yeah.
it's really dangerous.
Really dangerous. But it almost feels like we've got these extremes now on our roads. We've still got some idiots going over 100 miles an hour, and the majority of us are going along at 20. I think every road that I drive on, actually every road except one that I drive on from my home to here, is 20-mile-an-hour
I'm sure that's right.
journey in the morning.
Well, that's
which
good.
Some of them should be.
Yeah, but not all of them. But that's
absolutely
courtesy
should be.
of the London Mayor. But I think if you're caught doing 122 miles an hour and 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, you should be banned from driving for life.
Yeah, I agree. I think so too.
Because it's a lethal weapon, a car.
Oh, so one thing my kids always say, I'm obsessed with them crossing the road. Every time they go out the door, I say, be careful on the roads.
Yeah.
And they say, what is it with you and roads, Mummy? And I say, it is the biggest danger to you is being hit by a car.
And don't
it's
forget,
just dangerous.
a lot of people are on their phone,
Yeah.
or listening to their gadget, and they don't hear the car
Exactly.
coming.
They've got headphones in and they don't hear. Right, let us know your thoughts about whether we are getting it right on our roads. Are we penalising people who are still careful drivers and not maybe penalising harshly enough people who are super speeders? First, though, very latest news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. It's just after 10 o'clock. The latest from the newsroom. Let's start this hour with the breaking news coming to us out of Germany this morning, where police are responding in Munich to a major incident, they say, after a car reportedly crashed into a crowd during a protest march. We're hearing that it happened at a demonstration on the longest street in the city. Locals are reporting people seen crying and trembling at the scene. Some social media reports also suggesting at least one person seen lying on the ground. It's also reported, though unconfirmed at this stage, that a young man has been taken away by police. As I say, though, details at this stage remain unclear. A significant police operation is still underway in Munich. We are monitoring lines coming into us for any updates, and we will, of course, bring you the latest as soon as we get it. But at this stage, as I say, police in Munich responding to that major incident. Around 15 people believed to be involved in that incident after a car crashed into a large crowd in Munich earlier today. We will keep you across the very latest details. Well, turning now to news here in the UK, and figures released this morning show the economy unexpectedly grew at the end of last year, but GDP per head still fell. Growth between October and December last year was 0.1%, better than expected after stagnation in the previous 3 months. The data was compiled by the Office for National Statistics and is subject to revision. The Chancellor Rachel Reeves has pledged to go further and faster with her plan to put more money in people's pockets. But the Conservatives accuse the government of killing growth. Well, here's what the Chancellor Rachel Reeves had to say about today's figures earlier this morning.
The growth numbers have come in higher than many expected, but I'm still not satisfied with the level of growth that our economy is achieving, and that's why I am determined to go further and faster in delivering the economic growth and the improvements in living standards that our country deserves.
The Defence Secretary says there will be no talks about Ukraine without Ukraine involved, as John Healey insists Kyiv must be in the strongest position to negotiate. NATO's new Secretary-General also says any peace deal must prevent Russia from trying to seize more land in the future. It follows Donald Trump claiming he and Vladimir Putin had agreed to start talks on ending the war immediately.
We'll see what that means. I think when the war ends, one thing he was very strong about, if it ends, he wants it to end. And that's President Putin said that. He wants it to end. He doesn't want to end it and then go back to fighting 6 months later. We talked about the possibility, I mentioned it, of a ceasefire so we can stop the killing. And I think we'll probably end up at some point getting a ceasefire in the not too distant future. President Putin wants to have peace now, and that's good. And he didn't want to have peace with Biden.
2 men accused of attacking police at Manchester Airport are set to appear in court today after a video of the incident went viral. 20-year-old Mohammed Amaz faces multiple charges, including causing actual bodily harm to 2 officers and assaulting a member of the public. His brother, 25-year-old Mohammed Ahmad, is charged with injuring a male officer during a brawl at Terminal 2. A female officer suffered a broken nose, and 2 officers remain under investigation for potential misconduct. The brothers both deny the allegations and say they feel betrayed by the police watchdog and prosecutors. A public inquiry into the Nottingham attacks will begin within weeks after months of calls from the victims' families. They tearfully applauded that announcement at Downing Street, calling it a watershed moment. Take a listen.
We couldn't be more delighted. I think for the nation it's a great day because everyone who's also suffered the way we have, we will make sure that changes come.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer said it was crucial to compel witnesses to give evidence and make sure there was accountability. The inquiry follows multiple reviews into how police, prosecutors and mental health services handled Valdo Calacanes, who killed 3 people in June 2023. A retired judge will soon be appointed, with the Prime Minister promising families they'll be at the heart of the process. And Sir Keir Starmer has promised the largest house-building programme since the post-war era, with dozens of new towns built by British workers. More than 100 locations are being considered, each with at least 10,000 homes, as he vows to take on the NIMBYs and the Blockers. His plans were inspired by King Charles' work on a sustainable new town in Cornwall, which he visited on Monday. The move has raised concerns about dragging the King into politics just days before an announcement on building beautiful communities. But the Prime Minister insists he doesn't want to involve the monarch, only to deliver homes that give working people security and sustainability. And just before I hand you back to Andrew and Bev, who will, of course, have plenty more on this breaking news coming out of Munich, just the latest lines into us from reports in Germany. 15 people, we understand, have been injured in that incident where a person drove a car into a group of people on the longest street in the city. Social media reports suggesting at least 1 person seen lying on the ground, and unconfirmed reports that a young man has been taken away by police after that incident. We will keep you up to date on the very latest. That is the latest headlines from the GB Newsroom. Now it's straight back to Andrew and Bev.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Very good morning. Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev until midday. We're going to bring you that breaking news story from Munich as and when we get the details of it, of a car that's been driven into a group of people.
When you hear about that, you think instantly, is it going to be terror-related? You
do.
Particularly as they've got a big security conference coming up in Munich.
Yeah.
But we'll bring that as and when we can.
So David has said it from home. Morning, David. OK, then, if there is a large housing project going up next to you, would you accept it?
This goes to the heart of the government's growth strategy because they're saying no more NIMBYism, no more blockers. We will decide what's best. We will decide in Whitehall, and local councils can object as much as they like, but they're saying they will change the rules so that they can drive this through because they say it's going to be the only way they can get the houses we need. Because planners reflect what local people want. Local people often don't want a 10,000-acre 10,000 property estate near them. And it's going to be a huge clash with this government and often the countryside, because that's where we're going to put them. Well, I think, Bed, there's 1 million empty houses estimated in the UK. That's an increase of about 30% in 8 years. Get to grips with the inner cities. Sort out the houses in the inner cities. What about our decrepit high streets with shops that are closed down? Put flats above them. The last government said they were going to do it. They didn't.
I agree. Unfortunately,
Revive our town centres.
But in London, a lot of the empty properties are big houses owned by people who live in Saudi Arabia, people who live in China, people who live in Qatar, and they've bought up property in London and we've been made absolute mugs of. We're talking about the driving on the road as well. We're going to be talking to Amanda Stretton in a little while to look into the figures about how many people are being caught for speeding in the UK. And this viewer has said, I recall driving my fire appliance on Blues and Twos. People couldn't hear us. They had either their car stereo or headsets on extremely loud. The look of surprise on their faces when they finally do see you is quite amusing, but the implications can be fatal.
Great friend of mine's son, aged 32, been to the pub for a pint, was going home to have Sunday lunch with his wife. Dinner was in the oven, and he'd had 2 pints, and he was listening on his music, looking at his phone. Whack, the car hit him.
It is, honestly, as a parent, it is your worst nightmare because the kids are all walking around with their headphones on. Morning, David says 12 new towns to be built to accommodate 100,000. Well, that should take care of new people arriving on boats. Each town... may not go on to that. A wind farm in each location also to manage their energy needs, it says. Cars and motorbikes travelling at 20 miles an hour through London, says Ray, and the suburbs are causing more damage to the atmosphere at this speed because any fumes are near enough static at a very low level, pedestrian level. Whoever gives Khan his figures must be on the local councils. And...
Sir Sadiq to you. He's Sir Sadiq Khan now.
Andrew has also got in touch. Andrew, good morning. Andrew says, we all know that modern speed limits have little to do with safety. They're being based on cross-ply tyres and drum brakes. But 120 miles an hour and a 30 is attempted murder.
Well, that's why I think, at the very least, you lose your licence forever, and you should at least go to court. And see what a judge would decide.
Do you know what cross-ply tyres and drum brakes are?
No.
No, me neither. But, yes, I think there's a lot happening on the roads, which is to do with car technology, isn't it? Right, we want to thank you. Keep your messages coming, gbnews.com/your say.
We're going to bring you back to that breaking news out of Munich. German media are reporting a car is driven to a crowd including several people. Of course, it comes just one day before the Munich security conference, which begins tomorrow. Charlie Peters is our national reporter, joins us now.
We're being told by the Bild newspaper in Germany that up to 15 people potentially injured by this car being driven into a crowd of people in the Dachau Straße, the road that leads to Dachau out of Munich, so the northeast of the city. But we're also seeing unconfirmed reports on social media that a person was seen lying in the street. And more recently, we've heard from the police in Munich saying that the driver was able to be secured on site and currently poses no further danger. They said that they were at the scene of the incident where a vehicle drove into a group of people. Several people were injured, and it's a major police operation. They say they have strong forces on the site securing that location. Also seen some reports that a rally was taking place in that area from a trade union called Verdi, the second largest trade union in Germany. So potentially the case that this rally was targeted. Some reports in the German media that it was a strike event over a long-running wage dispute. And of course, Andrew, as you mentioned, this comes a day before the Munich Security Conference. There will be a significant range of world leaders, security leaders from NATO, and not only from NATO itself, but also from NATO countries, their senior leaders and foreign ministers and security ministers in the city. So that's extremely concerning to have this sort of event occurring so close to it. And of course, it comes barely 2 months after a major attack in December.
And of course, you've got big elections coming up in Germany with the AfD, the far-right party, expected to do very, very well. If this does turn out to be in any way terror-related, that will become an issue.
There will be significant concerns all over Germany right now that this could be a repeat of recent incidents that have shocked the nation so severely. But as it stands, up to 15 people injured, according to reports to Bild newspaper, a German newspaper covering the scene. The Munich police say that they have secured the location. The driver has been secured as well, and that there's no further danger. Some reports on social media of people being shaken, crying in the street, and a person seen on the ground, according to unconfirmed social media reports. We haven't been able to verify at this stage. But yes, this is the Dachau Straße, the road leading out of Munich, and it's the Verdi rally, the second largest trade union in Germany, holding a strike day where this incident has, it seems, occurred.
All right, Charlie Peters, our national reporter, and he'll be back with us as soon as we get any more information. Now, there's been a split in the Labour Party developing as the government announced it will block anyone who comes to the UK illegally, think about the small boats across the Channel, from becoming British citizens.
But some within the Labour Party think that it will make migrants classed as second-class citizens. So we're joined now by former Labour MP Steve McCabe. Morning, Steve.
Morning.
Morning. How damaging is this policy to the Labour Party?
Well, I don't think it's damaging at all. I think we should remember that citizenship is a privilege, it's not a right. And, you know, everybody wants something done about the boats, the small boats, and the numbers. It seems to me it's quite reasonable to question whether these people have any long-term right to remain in this country. It's one thing to give people limited right to remain when we're uncertain about their circumstances, but we can't cope. Everybody, I think, agrees we can't cope with these numbers. And there's no doubt if you're paying thousands of pounds to criminal gangs to come across in small boats or underneath lorries, then you're breaking the law.
Steve, one of your colleagues, former colleagues, Stella Creasy, she's a London MP, has attacked this move, and she's even cited Paddington Bear, the delightful bear that had tea with the Queen, of course, saying that these rules would have meant Paddington Bear could never have become a British citizen. Well, we shouldn't forget the fact that Paddington Bear was an illegal migrant from Peru, charming a character fictionally as he was. And I, for one, think perhaps your lot are getting it right here, probably because they're frightened about the Nigel Farage effect.
Well, look, I mean, I think Labour said when they were elected that they were going to look at a range of cost-effective measures to try and get on top of this. It is very difficult to stop the boats. I think most people now accept that. But this is one disincentive that is very cost-effective. And of course, you know, if Stella's really worried about Paddington Bear, we have to recognise that what the Minister said in the statement yesterday was that there will be mitigating circumstances. There will be people who've got good reason. But look, I can remember when I was on the Home Affairs Select Committee, we used to hear of cases of people who arrived from, in this case, it was countries in Africa. They gave names, they had no papers. There was no way of even testing if they were from the country they claimed to be from. And right this minute, there is real question marks being raised about some of the people who are arriving on the boats. So the idea that they think they can come here, remain here for 5 years and then become a British citizen strikes me as a real incentive and something that should be stopped.
What do you make of the story, Steve? It's on the front page of the Telegraph today. I think it's a shocker. A Nigerian woman who tried and failed 8 times to secure asylum. First of all, why was she allowed to try 8 times? When you've been turned down once, maybe even twice, that should be enough. She then joined a terrorist organisation back in Nigeria. The judge even conceded it was bogus, but she did it to protect herself, because if she went back to Nigeria, it would put her at risk from other people. So he granted asylum to her. What a complete abuse of the system.
Well, I haven't seen the story, but quite frankly, you know, it sounds ridiculous. And that's the kind of thing that we've got to tackle. That's the other end. We're talking about trying to not incentivise people to come here, but if they manage to come here, then we've got to have a much tougher look at the way the laws are applied. We had the example recently of the ruling on the Palestinian family who used the Ukrainian rules.
Outrageous.
Seems pretty crazy to me. So, I mean, we've got to look at the way the law is applied, and if the law has got loopholes, then they need to be tightened. But, you know, look, no one is saying that genuine refugees, people who need protection, should not be allowed to come to this country. I don't think anyone in any party really is saying that. But we are seeing that people who are manipulating the law, people who are paying criminal gangs, people who are coming here and giving false information, and people who think they're simply going to get to Britain and then after 5 years get all the benefits of citizenship, we're saying to them, that's not on.
Yeah. OK, thank you, Steve. Steve McCabe there from
former Labour MP.
I asked you about the... Oh, I don't know if I can find it now. I asked you about those... somebody got in touch with some information on the tyres and why... here we go. Thank you. Somebody got in touch on Twitter, D5RSS. Cross-ply tyres. Apparently, the tread goes across as opposed to modern radial. Mean anything to you? No. And drum brakes are still used on cheap cars for the rear wheels. It's cheaper than discs. Front car disc brakes tend to provide 70% of the car's braking.
I did read somewhere when I was writing about the fact I know that Streetcar wants to bring in road pricing, so you'll be charged per mile you do, as opposed to at the moment you've got the congestion charge, £15 standard, ULEZ, ultra-low emission zone, you pay £12 if your car is a certain age. But I know they're working on road pricing, and apparently car brakes are a lot to do with what he says is the pollution. And so the older the car, the worse the brakes are for pollution. Apparently.
I spend all my time with my foot on the brake because I can only go 20 miles an hour all the way here early in the morning.
London is a car park. If you have the misfortune to have to drive in London, it is a car park. The average speed, I think, is in some parts of London is barely 4 miles an hour.
Apparently it used to be quicker when we could get around by horse.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. Up next, if you are a DJ, a dog walker, or you can execute a perfect downward dog, find out why Britain needs you. Do you know what a downward dog is?
No.
Find out in just a minute. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Ironic article in The Guardian, Nick, caring about facts.
Yeah, this is Meta is ushering in a world without facts, says Nobel Peace Prize winner. And they just seem to give these Nobel Peace Prizes to anyone these days. So it's Maria Ressa.
Not working.
Zuckerberg came out, and it was very bold. He said a few things. We're going to use community notes instead of fact-checkers. Fact-checkers in inverted commas, it just means people pushing usually a specific viewpoint. Community notes seems to be a great system that X uses, so why not do that? I think that's great. He's going to reduce restrictions on topics like immigration and gender. Good, because I'm against censorship. He's going to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more, which is great. He's also moving content moderation to Texas instead of California, which is banter. So now the cynical version is he just realises we've got a new regime, it's the MAGA era, and I want to be mates with Trump, who said that I should that if I interfere with the 2024 election, he should spend the rest of his life in prison. So he did mention he might be a bit scared of that. He was involved in that in Facebook suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, and I feel that he didn't like being a part of all that from watching.
And also the suppression of arguments about gender and,
Yes,
and sex, what is biological sex and whatnot. You get banned for saying there are two sexes.
They're on the wrong side of this, and now he's correcting. But the weird thing is the people, of course, the people who don't like this, the lefties, this person, Ressa, is saying that this is a big problem. That it's an extremely dangerous time. I've seen all this from the lefties. They just call it disinformation. They're worried about this because to them it's disinformation. To other people it's information.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I think we can all agree if people think they're getting their facts just directly from Facebook, then something's horribly wrong. But we know that. The community notes thing, I think, is quite good because that sort of first-hand experience people are putting down, aren't they?
Yeah. People have loads of different views come together, and it's an aggregate, so that's why it works.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 10:25, Britain's Newsroom, Andrew Pearson, Ben Turner. Unusually, Karen Maloney's been quiet next to me, won't last. And British commentator Jonathan Liss, who for once has got a jumper that's quite respectable.
I mean, that's debatable.
That is debatable. What do you think of his jumper, Malone? Right,
I'm used to it now. I'm used to the kind of...
Damned with faint praise.
If you're listening on the radio, it's a cream knitted jumper with pink and yellow flowers on it. Yeah. Very spring-like.
Are you sure it didn't used to be white?
He is trying to change everything, though. He's now on a big diet.
Right, shall we move on to the news?
OK.
So, which one are we starting with? Carol, shall we start with...
You want to do this, the Trump? He's the
OK,
on that.
Jonathan. Donald Trump is going to solve the issue between Ukraine and Russia. He always said he would, and he's going to.
OK, so I think this is a massive, massive story for 2 reasons. First one is that Donald Trump is ripping up the rule book of the last 3 years, which says that Ukraine has been invaded, therefore Ukraine has to be involved in any major decisions. This is a Cold War style, big powers carve-up, essentially. A high-level negotiation between Russia and Washington.
He's also shut Europe a bit too.
Right, and that is massive. And Zelensky basically completely shafted by what is supposed to be not only his most important ally, but the guarantor of world peace.
But he spoke to Zelensky as one of the first people he spoke to.
He informed him of it. He informed him of a negotiation.
Zelensky said he wouldn't negotiate. Zelensky's line on this from day one has been, "I will not negotiate."
We all know...
Somebody needs to bang their heads together.
We all know that if the US tells Zelensky that he has to negotiate with Putin, Zelensky will have to do it. But that will involve Zelensky.
Of course.
This is basically Zelensky being an observer to his own country's state. And the second reason, and I think this is really important, and it hasn't been covered as much, is that the US, under Pete Hegseth, the new Defence Secretary,
Fabulous.
is basically saying, wait for me to finish before we say that, is that the US is no longer going to be the guarantor of European security. Which means that if there is another invasion somewhere, but that's exactly what the point is. The implication of that is that NATO is no longer fit for purpose because the US isn't going to sort of live up to its Article 5 guarantees.
It's the US that's pumped hundreds of billions of pounds of its own money into helping Ukraine, not NATO.
Well, NATO is not a government. The individual governments are responsible for that, and the US is clearly not the only country that has helped Ukraine.
And why
this is important because this changes. This is the biggest foreign policy shift, you might argue, since 1945. Because the United States is now saying that Europe can fend for itself. Well, it's not great. It's not great if a European country gets invaded and the US just sits back and lets it happen.
That's not what he said. That's not what Pete Hegseth said he was going to do at all. He was just saying that NATO has to work more efficiently together, and that America will contribute towards NATO, but not at the above everything else that the numbers that Europe are putting into.
He literally said that the US wouldn't guarantee European.
Malone, the fact is, Ukraine can't win this war. So how many more people are going to die?
No, they never could. And I suspect Zelensky is not going to survive as leader for very much longer, because Trump said something very sinister, I thought, yesterday, when asked about Zelensky's participation in these talks, which has been zilch. He said, you know, at some point we need to have elections. So that tells me that part of the deal
Don't the Ukrainian people deserve an election?
I'm not saying that they don't, but what I'm saying is that it seems that Trump is orchestrating what would be an election. He said publicly that Zelensky's figures aren't very good. You know, you know, people got to remember, yeah, that a lot of people have died, but remember back to when this started and what Putin actually did. You know, he marched in and he took territory that did not belong to him. And if part of this deal means that he has to forfeit that territory, that to me sends a signal out to aggressive countries all over the world.
He wins.
Go in and take what you want.
Putin wins.
And no
so
one
much more
But remember,
than that. It started 10 years ago, this dispute.
Carol is absolutely right. This means that aggressors now know that they can do whatever they like and win. And the other massive, you know, so Crimea, I think, is separate. I think that Crimea, that can be an internationally observed referendum.
That got nicked in 2014,
right,
and
so
the West did nothing about it.
This is not those, you know, the war that we're talking about is not in Crimea per se.
And I think what we have to all agree on is that we need the fighting to stop. All these principles, all this sends a message out. Can we just think about the hundreds of thousands of dead men in Ukraine, Russian and Ukrainian men?
Ukrainian people will think that all those dead men means that the fight has to go on because they don't want to lose their land. And I know quite a few Ukrainians who think exactly that.
Let's change the mood, because, Malone, you are a dog walker.
Yeah. You know, this story's been kind of cheapened by this dog walker. It's a story about how we know that many visas are being given out. They're called middle-skill jobs. And visas are being given out to people who do these middle-skill jobs. Now, some of the jobs that these visas are being given to are, I mean, it's beyond belief, dog walkers. Costume interpreters.
What are they?
Well, that's those people who stand outside.
They could do a job with him. They could do a job with Jonathan.
In a Victorian dress and wave you in. So apparently you have to import people to do that, apparently. 869 visas are being granted to air cabin staff. We have got 9 million people here called economically inactive, which means they just don't have jobs. And we are bringing in people to be, hang on, there's more, cycling instructors, dog walkers, stable hands. This is a whole load of jobs that could be done by people here. You know, we know that in the next 10 years, the population of this country is going to explode. It's going to go to something like 75.2 million. And we know that 90% of the extra people who are coming are going to be from immigration. And here we are letting people come to this country to do jobs that the people on the dole here could quite easily do.
Well, I think they're only. I think you have to take. These are tiny numbers. It's a few hundred people here, and you know these jobs. These jobs. I'm not qualified to tell you how much skill you need. I know I couldn't do most of these jobs.
Oh please, you couldn't walk a dog.
Well, look, I think that people who work with animals have a certain level of expertise. Or you know, I think that the dog. If you talk,
what are you talking about?
Carol,
you know,
Carol, people who work.
You put a dog on a lead and you go out for a walk.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's.
Did you have to get a degree before you started walking, Murphy?
I'm not saying it's equivalent to being a childminder.
You need a little bit of animal psychology to walk my dog.
It does require some skill, and if there are shortages.
Jonathan, it doesn't take any skill to dress up as a Victorian maid to stand outside a museum. It doesn't take any skill to be. Oh, hang on, I'm just looking at some of them here. A stable hand, because you're sweeping up dirty manure, basically.
I think that there are some jobs.
They're all respectable jobs, but they are not. The whole point. These visas are being given.
It's got to stop.
On the basis that they are skilled jobs.
And
they are not.
And if you remember,
there are people who can't fill those jobs.
The Tories were going to change the visa rules so that you had to have a bigger salary. It's going to go up to about 38,000. Labour have scrapped that, so it goes back to a low level, which will attract even more people like that coming in.
This tells you that Labour is not the vaguest bit serious about bringing immigration.
They're not interested.
We know what happened yesterday in the High Court. You know, with the ruling that about you know the Palestinian family being allowed to go, which opens the floodgates to possibly 2 million displaced Palestinians.
That's not true at all, Carol.
Well, it's absolutely true.
No. The whole point about Gaza, which makes it unique in refugee crises...
It's not unique for the Ukrainian resettlement.
Which makes it that they do not want to leave Gaza because they know they'll never be allowed back in. That's the whole point. They don't want to leave. Very, very few people actually want to leave
You
Gaza.
know them all, then, do you, Jonathan? You don't know that they're going to come to the same country.
But what about this family? What about this family?
What about the family that have just been granted to come to stay to this country? A family of 6. They haven't seen the bloke. I don't know who's the father. I don't know who he is. They haven't seen him for 17 years, and yet under some ridiculous ACHR pleading, they've been allowed to come to this country.
It's not, Carol. First of all, it's not ridiculous. It's not at all ridiculous. Trump has even said Gaza's been obliterated, civilization wiped out.
So why is Egypt turning them away? Why is Jordan turning them away? The countries that have taken Palestinians, look at Denmark, look at...
We are late for the news.
Because we are late for the news. We are a soft touch. That's why.
No, that's not the reason.
Sam Francis has got your headlines, 10:33.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom, 10:34 exactly. Let's bring you now the latest breaking developments from Munich, where we have learned that a car has ploughed into a protest march there, leaving at least 15 people injured. It happened on Dachaustrasse, the longest street in Munich, during a rally earlier. Witnesses have said people were seen crying and trembling at the scene. The driver, believed to be a young man, has now been detained. Police say he poses no further danger, though details of what took place remain unclear at this stage. Emergency services are still on site and a major police investigation is now underway. And the crash comes as world leaders, including Ukraine's President Zelensky, are gathering in the city for a major security conference. Here, meanwhile, figures released this morning show the economy unexpectedly grew at the end of last year, but GDP per head still fell. Growth between October and December last year was 0.1%, better than expected after stagnation in the previous 3 months. The data was compiled by the Office for National Statistics and is subject to revision. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has pledged to go further and faster with her plan to put more money in people's pockets. But the Conservatives accuse the government of killing growth. The NHS waiting list in England has dropped for the 4th month in a row, now at its lowest level since April 2023. Figures show 7.46 million treatments were waiting at the end of December, down slightly from November's total and well below last year's peak. Long waits are also falling. Patients waiting over a year for treatment are at their lowest level since 2020. But more than 2,000 people had been waiting over 18 months, a number that has barely changed. The government aims to eliminate year-long waits by March this year, and they say reduce them further by 2026. The Defence Secretary says there will be no talks about Ukraine without Ukraine's involvement, as John Healey insists Kyiv must be in the strongest position to negotiate. NATO's new Secretary-General also says any peace deal must prevent Russia from trying to seize more land in the future. It follows Donald Trump claiming he and Vladimir Putin had agreed to start talks on ending the war immediately. And Sir Keir Starmer has promised the largest house-building programme since the post-war era, with dozens of new towns built by British workers. More than 100 locations are being considered, each with at least 10,000 homes, as he vows to take on the NIMBYs and the Blockers. His plans were inspired by King Charles' work on a new sustainable town in Cornwall, which he visited on Monday. The move, though, has raised concerns about dragging the King into politics just days before an announcement on building beautiful communities. But the Prime Minister has insisted he doesn't want to involve the monarch, only to deliver homes that give working people security and stability. Those are the latest headlines for now. Plenty more on that breaking news from Munich as the details come into us. Now, though, it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Up next, do young people in Britain need to have more pride in this country and where they come from? We're going to be debating that in just a minute. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good morning, I'm here with your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. You may actually see a bit of sunshine today with a greater chance of some cloud breaks compared to recent days, but there will be a few showers around. The showers don't look particularly heavy and most of us will actually avoid these, so staying largely dry, and like I said, there will be some sunny breaks, especially across northern western parts of Scotland, western parts of Wales, but even elsewhere some breaks in the cloud are possible. Towards the southwest we are going to see the cloud actually increasing here and the winds picking up later as well. But otherwise, temperatures, well, still a bit disappointing for the time of year, and if you are stuck under that stubborn cloud, then it is going to feel chilly indeed. Later on, and as we go through this evening, like I said, some clearer skies through the daytime across parts of Scotland, and these will lead to a largely clear start to the night, and where we get clear skies overnight, a frost quite likely to form. So turning quite quickly chilly here. Meanwhile, where the cloud lingers across parts of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern England, it is going to stay that little bit milder for a little while yet, but some clear breaks are going to develop as we go through the night. Meanwhile, towards the southwest, the Isles of Scilly, the tip of Cornwall, we are going to see some rain pushing its way in. Then overnight, that rain towards the southwest pushes across parts of Cornwall and Devon and also into Northern Ireland. Could see some freezing rain, a bit of snow in association with this. Otherwise, and away from eastern coastal parts, there will be some clearer skies than we've seen through recent nights, so greater chance of temperatures dropping below freezing, and so a greater chance of us waking up to a bit of frost, even some patches of fog or freezing fog first thing tomorrow morning. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, and a bit wet across parts of Northern Ireland, still a bit of hill snow and some freezing rain possible. Also increasing amounts of cloud and rain across parts of Wales and the southwest of England. Some cloud lingering across the far east of England and Scotland too, but in between we have some brighter and drier and sunnier weather to be had. That being said, temperatures not rising a huge amount, so still feeling chilly. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In the Highland, the A9 is closed in both directions past Aviemore after a lorry caught fire early this morning. There are delays of up to an hour to Stena Line sailings between Cairnryan and Belfast. In Northamptonshire, the A14 is closed each way between junctions 10 and 11, between Burton Latimer and Cranford St John because of a medical emergency. There are queues from junction 12 at Islip and long delays as you divert. In Cambridgeshire, the A14 is partly blocked eastbound. At junction 15, the Keyston and Bythorn turn causing delays. The M11 in Essex is blocked southbound by an accident between junctions 9 and 8 from the A11 to the Bishop Stortford Stansted Airport turn causing delays, and then closed southbound from junction 8 at Stansted to 7A north of Harlow with long delays there. And there's disruption to some flights to and from Belgium today because of industrial action there. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good morning, welcome to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev. We're going to be debating in just a minute whether Generation Z...
I think it's Generation Z. You know.
Well, that's what the Americans say. I'm surprised when you say Gen Z.
Well, I never know because I just hear it on the radio.
Well, Americans call it Gen Z.
Yeah.
Because they came up with the phrase. We're British, we don't say Z. I say Gen Z.
Yeah. Who drink less, we know that.
They don't have any sex.
And they want drugs legalised.
Well, and they don't have a lot of fun.
They don't.
Let's be honest.
And so they've been polled to show that they don't think much of Britain. They're 18 to 27-year-olds.
18 to 27, thank you very much.
And they think many of them are teetotal, but they wouldn't. The point about this poll shows that the majority of them would not fight for this country because they don't believe in the country and they think Britain is racist.
In some ways, all right, this is going to get me into all sorts of trouble. So just before the inbox explodes, there is a sense in which if my son was called up to war, I wouldn't want him to go and fight for this shower in Westminster and their ridiculous decisions. I wouldn't. I don't mind saying that. All my daughters. Well, those days are gone, I'm afraid.
I sort of agree with you. So the Iraq War, I never understood why Tony Blair took Britain into war with a fight which George W. Bush started with Saddam Hussein to get revenge for his dad because of the bombing.
Yeah.
And I just don't think we had a dog in that fight. And whereas fighting to liberate Europe from fascism under the Nazi Germany and the prospect of them coming here. And I also thought Mrs Thatcher was quite right to send a task force to the Falklands, which is as British as Milton Keynes, to liberate the Falkland Islands.
Yeah.
And that killed hundreds of British soldiers.
But I sort of understand why Generation Z don't feel that they've not been told to take any pride in this country. So why would they be like, why would I literally go and risk killing myself, or worse, have to kill somebody else for this country? Let's talk now to our guests. This is political commentator Charlie Downs and social commentator Iman Aitan. Good morning to you both. Iman, let me start with you. We've got a generation that just think this country's not worth defending. That's quite sad, isn't it?
Oh, I totally agree with you, Bev. If I tried to connect back to my British sense of belonging, it has been diminished as of late. But if I go back to that, I totally agree with you. It's quite unfortunate because we did have it back in the day. I wasn't astute or alive to these things, but I appreciate your sentiment. We've definitely transitioned in terms of pride and patriotism. I would like to just kind of break down my kind of opinion as to why that may be the case. I'll just keep it brief. Personally, I think it starts with a lack of fulfillment in terms of work life. I think we've all seen, if I just be honest, Charlie, I'm also talking to you. Please tell me if I'm wrong. We've all seen our parents and our grandparents and all of these different amazing people work really hard, and they're still somewhat unfulfilled. They're still somewhat unhappy, still slaving away, still struggling to pay their bills, irrespective of whether you're middle class or working class. So I think that plays a role. I think they're bored of the status quo. And dare I say, I think we're also bored as a young person. I'm a millennial, not quite Gen Z, millennial. As a millennial, I can add to that by saying that I just feel like we're bored of the status quo in terms of what we're used to in terms of this kind of being exposed to covert bias and being manipulated by different types of people with their agendas, personal agendas of career and power, which is what we see with politicians.
Yeah.
So I think that plays a role. I'm also going to just say just a couple more things. Power and status, which is another aspect of living life as a human being. We need these things. We need to be heard and we need to be taken seriously. This is the very thing that gives us self-esteem as individuals. We also need opportunities and we also need strong leadership.
Okay.
So I'm going to leave that at that.
Thank you. So, Charlie, this idea that there's all apathy, but alongside apathy, also just a sense of sort of nihilism. What's the point? Why would we bother? And look at the other generations before us had it better than us. Go on, Charlie.
Well, I actually agree with some of the points made there. I think that modern capitalism has flattened a lot of what it is to be British. You know, you walk down the high streets and all of them look the same. They're kind of just full of identical American chains and various barber shops and vape shops and so on. But actually, I think that there is a deeper level to this, because I think we need to actually define what we mean by British, right? Because this is a debate that's been raging for my whole life. When I was in school, I remember that Britishness was defined through the concept of British values, right? And this is still something that's actually codified in law. It was brought into law in 2015 and was taught in the schools from then by, well, I mean, Michael Gove brought that into law. British values are defined as democracy, the rule of law, individual liberty, and the tolerance and respect of different faiths and beliefs. Now, if that's what your identity is, you know, if that's what it means to be British, that's pretty thin gruel. I mean, that's basically a 4-point kind of fashionable political doctrine that could be taught off of a PowerPoint slide in some kind of corporate seminar. That's not, you know, particularly nourishing. And we live in the age of identity now, as I think we all agree. And so with young people feeling so deracinated and so without a sense of belonging, purpose, place, rootedness, and again, that is partly because of the economic system, it's no wonder that they are looking for identity. And when British identity is offered to them and it's defined in this way that is very, very thin, very, very abstract, it's no wonder that they don't feel proud to be British. So I would actually say we need to actually sort of rethink what we actually mean by British, go back to a more rooted, more fundamental, spiritual definition that's rooted not in abstract ideas, but in people, because that's actually what Britishness is.
Go on, Iman.
Okay, all right, Charlie, all right, I'm feeling the vibe. Okay, Charlie, I actually agree with you, and I in fact, I won't validate you too much because I think you explained that very well, so I'll give credit where it's due. I'll just add to your point if you wouldn't mind, sir. Where I say that you are wrong is when you said that it's not particularly nourishing in regards to British values, these British values. Like, I think of, and again, I'm centrist, I can kind of think from both sides. We ended the slave trade. That's a value right there. That's a real strong value. And I think that if we were able to kind of connect to that value and not be incongruous with our current behaviour, we'd probably be more aligned with our pride and patriotism moving forward. And that would probably give we give license for people to want to be in the army and want to be in the Navy and fight for their nation. So I'll put it a different way. I think that in regards to young people, I think that we are missing something, a trick with young people, which is that they really do love critical thinking. That's the truth. We like to evaluate. I'm a millennial, so I'm not a Gen Z, so I'm just talking from millennial, but we like to evaluate. We like to analyze things. It's exciting. It allows our brains to grow. And I think that's been the issue. We don't have that nuance in regards to political discourse. We don't have that nuance in terms of media. This is why they go to YouTube and Insta and Twitter and X, and all of these other places to find that nuance. And so I think that's what we're missing. We don't appreciate the fact that young people are critical thinkers and they are desperate for more. They don't want to be manipulated. And I'll just say one more thing. Because they are critical thinkers, they appreciate the fact that we are delving into a place where we are leading with so much overt racism and covert racism.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you actually analyse it, it's not okay. So therefore, I don't want to fight for you because you're not.
We need to go, guys. I'm so sorry.
All the different types of people in this country.
We need to move on. Charlie Downs, Iman Aiton, thank you very much. That was rather well mannered, wasn't it?
They were polite. Up next, a car drove into a group of people, leaving several injured in Munich. We're going to have the latest on that. But first, if you're in search of some of that elusive winter sun, here's a forecast of some of our best European holiday destinations.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
We have some heavy thundery rain affecting eastern parts of the Mediterranean at the moment. Meanwhile, there is also a band of rain pushing in from the west tomorrow, affecting parts of Madeira later on and pushing into the far west of Spain and Portugal as well. Also some hefty rain affecting Italy, but it's around the Adriatic coastline where we're going to have some heavy thundery downpours, even some significant snow for Croatia in particular, with 10 to 20 centimetres even to lower levels. Elsewhere, a mostly fine story.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Sadly, on the 18th of December last year, I was 9:20 in the morning in London on Woolwich Manor Way, going about my business to deliver something to someone, and I heard a banging on my car door. The handle was being rattled, but I locked my door in London, Martin, and the next thing I knew was a fist with something metal just punched through the driver's window into my face and knocked me over to the passenger seat. I had a wonderful angel called Bobby, who was my witness, who saw it happen. We got to hospital in Essex. They couldn't deal with it because it was a bad injury, and I ended up in Moorfields Hospital on the 19th. My lovely wife was incredible, and I had an operation, and currently, as I sit opposite you, I have 6 stitches holding my eyeball together, and I've got at least 3 more operations to hopefully get my sight back.
Now, the astonishing thing about this is it was just a random act from some nutter. It's changed your life forever. The moment you can't see, your cornea is dislodged, you need to go undergo major eye surgery. But Mike, a lot of people will be saying the obvious thing. Why has nobody been nicked? Well, I know Woolwich, right? You can't drive through Woolwich without getting a ticket for ULEZ, right? The geezer was in a van or a car?
He was in a dark van, and I unfortunately wasn't able to take a photograph of the reg plate.
There's got to be CCTV there.
There's got to be CCTV there, and all I can say is that I do feel let down because it's GBH, it's not just stealing a handbag, not that that's making, you know, a small issue of that, that's bad enough, but being GBH, they dropped the case after 3 weeks.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Well, joining us now is national reporter Charlie Peters about what's been happening in Munich. Morning, Charlie. What's the latest?
Well, the German newspaper Bild is now reporting that up to 20 people have been injured and 2 of them seriously in a car ramming incident in Munich, in the capital of Bavaria. Ambulances are on the site, and at around 10:30 this morning local time, a driver is said to have accelerated and then sped into demonstrators at this main road. Police investigations are now working to clarify whether the driver drove into the crowd intentionally or confused the accelerator and the brake. That's what sources are telling the Bild newspaper. We're also hearing, and I haven't been able to get a second source for this information, that some shots were fired beforehand. Again, I can't verify this, but that's what Bild newspaper, a very credible source in Germany, is reporting. And we're also being told that the car was a Mini Cooper. Not necessarily the car you typically associate with this sort of incident, were it to be deemed a terror attack. We're also being told that a mother and child were apparently lying under the car after the incident was first reported, and the police are now working to secure the site and to gather more information. But as I said, up to 20 seriously injured and 2 seriously injured, 20 injured in that incident this morning in Munich.
OK, thank you, Charlie. Up next, 2 brothers have denied assaulting police officers. Do you remember this? It was the disturbance at Manchester Airport last July. It's in Sport today.
This is Britain's Newsroom and GB News.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm here with your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. You may actually see a bit of sunshine today with a greater chance of some cloud breaks compared to recent days, but there will be a few showers around. The showers don't look particularly heavy and most of us will actually avoid these, so staying largely dry, and like I said, there will be some sunny breaks, especially across northern western parts of Scotland, western parts of Wales, but even elsewhere some breaks in the cloud are possible. Towards the southwest we are going to see the cloud actually increasing here and the winds picking up later as well. But otherwise, temperatures, well, still a bit disappointing for the time of year, and if you are stuck under that stubborn cloud, then it is going to feel chilly indeed. Later on, and as we go through this evening, like I said, some clearer skies through the daytime across parts of Scotland, and these will lead to a largely clear start to the night, and where we get clear skies overnight, a frost quite likely to form. So turning quite quickly chilly here. Meanwhile, where the cloud lingers across parts of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern England, it is going to stay that little bit milder for a little while yet, but some clear breaks are going to develop as we go through the night. Meanwhile, towards the southwest, the Isles of Scilly, the tip of Cornwall, we are going to see some rain pushing its way in. Then overnight, that rain towards the southwest pushes across parts of Cornwall and Devon and also into Northern Ireland. Could see some freezing rain, a bit of snow in association with this. Otherwise, and away from eastern coastal parts, there will be some clearer skies than we've seen through recent nights, so a greater chance of temperatures dropping below freezing, and so a greater chance of us waking up to a bit of frost, even some patches of fog or freezing fog first thing tomorrow morning. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, and a bit wet across parts of Northern Ireland, still a bit of hill snow and some freezing rain possible. Also increasing amounts of cloud and rain across parts of Wales and the southwest of England. Some cloud lingering across the far east of England and Scotland too, but in between we have some brighter and drier and sunnier weather to be had. That being said, temperatures not rising a huge amount, so still feeling chilly. Bye-bye.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't
Don't miss your chance to be one of 2 big winners in our latest Great British giveaway, as we have 2 prize bundles that have to be won. First, you'll win a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash to spend however you like. You'll also receive the very latest iPhone 16, and we'll send you on a shopping spree with £500 to spend in your favourite store. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, 11 a.m. on Thursday, the 13th of February, live across the UK, Britain's newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So some breaking news this morning coming out of Munich in Germany. A car has driven into a group of people just a day ahead of the Munich Security Conference. We'll bring you the very latest.
And 2 brothers have denied assaulting police officers in a disturbance at Manchester Airport last July. Sophie Reaper has more.
This morning here at Liverpool Crown Court, brothers Mohammed Ahmad and Mohammed Ammaz pleaded not guilty on all counts ahead of their trial scheduled for June.
And build, build, build. The Prime Minister has unveiled plans for 12 new towns after taking inspiration from the King in Cornwall on a visit to some houses earlier in the week. But where will these new towns be?
Labour divided. The government says it will block anyone coming to the UK illegally by small boats from ever becoming British citizens, but it's caused a split in the Labour Party.
And human rights laws exploited. A Nigerian migrant was given the right to stay in Britain because she joined a terror group in her country after previously failing 8 times to claim asylum here.
And Britain's speeding drivers, nearly half of all police forces catch drivers doing more than 90 miles an hour on 30 mile an hour speed limit areas. We're asking, do you feel safe on our roads?
Now, I told you I had to do a speed awareness course recently. I got caught doing 23 in a 20.
And you thought it was ridiculous?
Well, I thought it was ridiculous. It was a very wide road. It was very early on a Saturday morning. Anyway, I took my punishment. 2 people on the course couldn't speak sufficient English. They had to have a family member with them translating. And That just made me think, well, how well have they understood the highway code?
Can they read the signs?
Can they read? Did they understand? I don't know. gbnews.com/your say. Let us know your thoughts. Here's Sam Francis with your news.
Bev, Andrew, thank you very much indeed. Good morning to you. 2 minutes past 11. Let's get you up to date then on the breaking news out of Germany this morning. A car ploughing into a crowd in Munich, injuring, we now know, at least 20 people. Several critically, according to German police. Officers have now sealed off the area and they're urging people to stay away to allow emergency crews through to the scene. The driver has been detained. Authorities say there is no further danger, but it's still unclear if it was deliberate. Munich's mayor says he's been told that children are among those who've been injured and called the incident deeply shocking. The crash happened just days before the Munich Security Conference, where world leaders, including Ukraine's president, are set to arrive there. Here at home, meanwhile, figures released this morning show the economy unexpectedly grew at the end of the year, but GDP per head still fell. Growth between October and December last year was 0.1%. That's better than expected after stagnation in the previous 3 months. The data was compiled by the Office for National Statistics and is still subject to revision. Well, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, pledged to go further and faster with her plan to put more money in people's pockets. Take a listen.
The growth numbers have come in higher than many expected, but I'm still not satisfied with the level of growth that our economy is achieving, and that's why I am determined to go further and faster in delivering the economic growth and the improvements in living standards that our country deserves.
The NHS waiting list in England has dropped for the 4th month in a row, now at its lowest level since April 2023. Figures show more than 7.4 million treatments were waiting at the end of December, down slightly from November's total and well below last year's peak. Long waits are also falling. Patients waiting over a year for treatment are now at their lowest since 2020, but more than 2,000 people had been waiting over 18 months, a number that has barely changed. The government, though, says it does aim to eliminate year-long waits by March of this year and reduce them completely, or further at least, by 2026. The Defence Secretary says there will be no talks about Ukraine without Ukraine, as John Healey insists Kyiv must be in the strongest position to negotiate. NATO's new Secretary-General also says any peace deal must prevent Russia from trying to seize more land in the future. It follows Donald Trump claiming he and Vladimir Putin had agreed to start talks on ending the war immediately.
We'll see what that means. I think when the war ends, one thing he was very strong about, if it ends, he wants it to end. And that's President Putin said that. He wants it to end. He doesn't want to end it and then go back to fighting 6 months later. We talked about the possibility, I mentioned it, of a ceasefire so we can stop the killing. And I think we'll probably end up at some point getting a ceasefire in the not too distant future. President Putin wants to have peace now, and that's good. And he didn't want to have peace with Biden. And you tell me why that is, okay?
Sir Keir Starmer has promised the largest house-building programme since the post-war era, with dozens of new towns built by, he says, British workers. More than 100 locations are being considered, each with at least 10,000 homes, as he vows to take on the NIMBYs and the blockers. His plans were inspired by King Charles' work on a new sustainable town in Cornwall, which he visited on Monday. But the move has raised concerns about dragging the King into politics, just days before an announcement on building beautiful communities. But the Prime Minister insists he doesn't want to involve the monarch, only to deliver homes that give working people security and sustainability. And we're just about to get plenty more news and update on the situation in Munich with our national reporter Charlie Peters. But I just want to bring you these pictures that have just come into us from the Reuters news agency of the scene where that car has ploughed into a crowd in the city, injuring, we now know, at least 20 people, several critically injured, according to German police. The driver has been detained, and the mayor of Munich saying in the last few minutes that he has been told that there are children among those injured, calling the incident deeply shocking. We will get plenty more in just a few moments' time with Charlie Peters, Andrew and Bev. Let's hand you straight back to them now.
At least 20 people, several critically, according to German police. Let's talk to Charlie Peters, who is our national reporter. Charlie.
So in the last hour, we had at least 20 people injured, 2 of them critically after a car rammed into a rally, a striking rally by a left-wing trade union called Verdi in Munich. We're now being told by a Munich-based daily newspaper that one woman was dead and several else have been hurt critically in this incident. We haven't been able to verify or take a second source from that report, but this is a major daily newspaper in Munich reporting that one woman has now died following this incident. Footage that we've seen on social media appears to show many people lying on the streets as emergency services tend to them on the ground. Ambulances are on the site. Bild newspaper, a national newspaper in Germany, are saying at least 20 injured. But the police said on social media platform X that the driver had been secured at the scene and no longer poses any danger. We're also being told from Bild that shots were fired beforehand, according to eyewitnesses. We cannot verify this at GB News, but we are seeing reports that police may have shot at the car window, possibly to gain access to the driver before detaining them. But police have also not confirmed if any shots were fired. They only have said that the driver has been secured at the scene and a major police operation is ongoing. So what do we know about the incident itself? At around 10:30 a.m. this morning, local time in Germany, the driver is said to have suddenly accelerated this vehicle, a Mini Cooper, which itself is quite strange, not typically associated with the car ramming attacks that we've seen in the past, although there's no suggestion at this stage that that is what has happened here, although indications would suggest that's a possibility, of course. This car accelerated, it says, and then sped towards the people who were at this rally on a main street in Munich, the Dachaustrabe, leading away from Munich city centre. Police investigations are now attempting to clarify whether this driver, who's been detained, drove intentionally or confused the accelerator and the brake before this occurred. An eyewitness at the scene has said that this Mini Cooper hit a woman with a child, and the demonstrator who was part of this Verdi rally said that the mother and child were apparently lying under the car. Really disturbing reports coming from the Bavarian capital this morning. Many city employees stopped work today in Munich to demonstrate in a strike demanding an 8% pay rise. This is part of this strike that we're seeing today. The crowd that was hit in this attack, which we don't know if it's an attack, this incident so far. We don't know if they were targeted deliberately, but the latest reports say that 20 people injured, 2 of them seriously, and a separate newspaper, a very highly respected Bavarian daily newspaper, saying that one woman has now died as a consequence of this incident.
Chaotic there. Look at this. We're watching the scenes here on TV from Munich. Huge numbers of emergency service workers and first responders there. So thank you, Charlie, for bringing us that. Right. Now, do you remember the 2 brothers accused of assaulting police officers during a disturbance at Manchester Airport last July? Well, they have pleaded not guilty at Liverpool Crown Court today.
Let's join our North of West England reporter, Sophie Reaper, who has the latest. Sophie, morning to you, Sophie.
Yes, good morning to you both. Well, last month, the 2 brothers made their first appearance here at Liverpool Magistrates Court, where they gave no indication of their plea, and the judge then allocated it instead to Crown Court. So that's what's happened here this morning. The 2 brothers have made an appearance at Liverpool Crown Court for that plea hearing and trial preparation. The 2 brothers stood to confirm that identity and then went on to give their pleas. Mohammed Amaz, aged 20, charged with 1 count of assault by beating, 2 counts of actual bodily harm and 1 count of assaulting an emergency worker. He pleaded not guilty on all 4 of those counts. Then it was the turn of his brother Mohammed Ahmad, aged 20. He pleaded not guilty to the 1 count of actual bodily harm which he faces. So not guilty across the board on those charges. Once the pleas were over, the judge then extended the brothers' bail until the time of their trial, which has now been scheduled to commence from the 30th of June this year.
Thank you, Sophie. Sophie Reaper there in Manchester. Obviously, it was a hugely controversial case, that wasn't it?
Hugely,
Do you remember the footage came out in stages, didn't it, of those police officers?
At one point, Nigel Farage and Reform UK were saying that if there wasn't a prosecution by the Crown, they would take a private prosecution, but it is a proper conventional Crown prosecution. Now, Sir Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, has promised the largest house-building programme since the post-war era, with dozens of new towns. He says they're all going to be built by British workers.
I'm not sure how we can guarantee that. Well, let's speak to property expert and political commentator Russell Quirk. Russell, let's start with that. How can a Prime Minister guarantee that these houses are going to be built by British people? If you're a builder looking to employ the cheapest labour, you're not necessarily going to be dictated to by the Prime Minister, are you?
Well, no, it's a great headline, isn't it, Bev? Lovely politics. But the reality is there's barely enough labour in Britain and materials to build the 200,000 homes a year that we traditionally do build. Now, this announcement today, these new towns, 10 of them out of a sample of 100 that apparently have been put forward, seeks to build another 120,000 homes as part of that quest to get to 300,000 homes a year. Frankly, yes, it looks good, but there is the resource issue, as we're outlining, but also the problem here is trying to encourage the top 10 house builders, the big developers in Britain, who actually are responsible for about 70% of all house building, trying to persuade them just to simply increase their output by 30, 40, 50% above normal is not something that seems to be discussed in Whitehall. And frankly, I'm afraid to say that despite the rhetoric, Angela Rayner, Keir Starmer and co do not themselves build houses. Those houses get built by property developers and builders. And frankly, why would they bother building more and more homes if that influx of output, that increase in stock, was actually going to threaten house prices by dropping them? So the likes of Persimmon, Bovis, Taylor Wimpey and so on, I'm afraid these are the people that we need to be hearing from to ask them simply, are you going to increase your output by 30, 40 or 50% to meet Angela Rayner's targets? And honestly, Bev and Andrew, we have heard this story of new towns many times before. I remember being chairman of the planning committee at Brentwood Borough Council 10 years ago, and it was mooted by the previous government that there were going to be lots and lots of lovely new towns and garden cities. And I can tell you that the one nearest to where I live in Dunton, near Brentwood in Essex, we first started talking about 10 years ago. And guess what? It still hasn't been built.
And Russell, I'm not sure I agree it is good news, 10 or 12 new towns, when we know there are so many derelict, empty properties in our inner cities, in our towns and cities. Why can't they be renovated, restored and brought back into use? And that would revive some of our town centres, which have become ghost towns in the last few years because of out-of-town shopping and online shopping.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands of empty properties. Many of them, of course, owned by private individuals. But I have to tell you this, Andrew, there are also tens of thousands of properties owned by local authorities and government departments that are empty. So you would imagine that the government would kind of begin at home, no pun intended, with regard to those properties. Now, the challenge there, of course, is that if you are going to service an extra 700,000 people a year coming to Britain by way of net migration, 25% of people living on their own, people living longer and so on, then you do need not just more homes of various tenures, shapes and sizes across various areas of the country, but of course you also need infrastructure. Now, what you would achieve really by filling in those piecemeal empty properties here and there is not an infrastructure increase. You would not then increase roads, doctors' surgeries and so on, which is actually the one benefit of new towns, is that you would get a rail station, a road in and out. You would get, perhaps hopefully some doctors' surgeries if we have any doctors to put in them. So that makes sense. But the problem is the headline grabbing here is really, really easy to do. And frankly, we've seen property and housing being a political football kicked around by politicians since we last built enough houses, which honestly was in the 1960s under the Macmillan government. It was as long ago as that.
OK, thank you so much. Russell Quirk there, property expert, as usual. Sounds good on paper, might be quite difficult to execute.
Here's the other thing. This government is rushing to net zero, which you and I don't agree with. How sustainable is it to concrete over thousands of acres of green grass countryside to build new houses?
But that's what I'm saying. Do you know the biggest contributor to carbon emissions in this country is the building industry. And that's why I'm saying they have to be more creative, because you can't just put old-fashioned concrete and brick-built houses up and still maintain that you're trying to save the planet. If they are going to build new houses for people, then they have to be climate-positive houses. And actually, I think your point about the fact that we've got so many office blocks now because everyone works from home that are empty.
Absolutely.
Are they trying hard enough
There's
to
loads of
change
them.
those to residential properties?
Yeah, yeah. And I remember Michael Gove was part of the Levelling Up programme, and he was in environment. He said, we're going to put all those empty shops and above offices, we're going to have flats in them. It never happened.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Right. Poll of the day.
And I make a prediction. They will not hit their target of building 1.5 million homes by 2029. They won't even get to 1 million.
It's not. They've got no chance whatsoever. Right, bringing us to our poll of the day. We are asking you, and we were talking about this with Carol and Jonathan, can Donald Trump stop the war in Ukraine? We'll bring you the results live later on. The final result will be announced in Martin Daubney's show.
For all our latest polls, news and how to vote, just go to gbnews.com/poll. Up next, though, join a terror group. This is serious, and you can stay in the UK. Amazing, isn't it? This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Jonathan, in London, we're hearing that there could be more posties from an Amazon point of view in order to limit or cut carbon emissions, but that they could put more people on foot delivering their parcels.
This is really interesting because more and more people now obviously are using Amazon and buying their shopping online or buying gifts online. And it's interesting that in London they're talking about putting their Amazon workers on foot. There are now parts of the country, I think Milton Keynes is one part of the country, where there's robots delivering parcels. Or
Really?
You'll see these, well, they call them robots. You'll see these little things sort of bundling down the street.
Yes.
Sort of,
robots.
Yeah, I mean, technically they're a robot, but when I think of a robot, I think of a sort of...
A humanoid robot.
Yeah, sort of humanoid thing, sort of, Lost in Space style robot. But actually, they're sort of... little sort of carriages, little
droids,
boxes.
like Star Wars droid type.
Well, they're not
thing.
even that. They're like a little sort of, they're like a box on wheels, delivering parcels in places like Milton Keynes and other bits of the country. So I think this is just another example of how the world is changing. Online shopping is completely changing the way in which we all live our lives, the way things. The way
But I think
things are
Milton
delivered.
Keynes lends itself to something like that. This is a newly designed town. And
Exactly, that's why they're in Milton Keynes.
And I really do think that a town like that really does lend itself towards a piece of tech like that. When I think back, our postie in Gloucestershire is a guy called Dave. He's fantastic. Everyone knows who he is. But I'm not sure that he could be replaced by one of these little droid things.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Newsroom, live across the UK. We've got Carol Malone and Jonathan Liss with us in the studio. Somebody said it's nice to see that your mother's been knitting again, Jonathan.
I mean, I think that's a compliment to her. She'll love that. I mean,
Yeah.
doesn't it really? But that's.
I think she's probably got her head in her hands soon.
No, she loves my sense, Carol.
Right, what are we talking about here, guys? Join a terror group and stay in the UK, Carol. This is this Nigerian woman failed 8 times.
But before you even get into the terror group, how was she allowed to apply 8 times?
Well, I don't quite know. I mean,
unbelievable.
Yeah, well, because she'd been told to by her lawyers. But I mean, you guys alluded to this story before. It's farcical. It's beyond belief. So on the 9th time, the judge has made the ruling that because she came here in 2011, she joined a terror group, a Nigerian terror group, which has committed acts of violence against Nigeria. Now, she's here, having joined that group, having probably been advised to by a human rights lawyer.
Oh, I'm sure of that.
I suspect. So now it means that she can't go back home because she'll be killed by the government because of being a member of this group. Now, what this highlights, this is not what the Human Rights Act was designed for, you know. And what's happening now, increasingly, and we've seen the Telegraph has played a blinder this week. There's 3 or 4 cases this week that illustrated how we now have immigration law that's been dictated by judges. You cannot have that. It's it's
because they might have their own prejudice and their own bias.
And we saw this week, didn't we? The case of when the Gazans were allowed to stay.
Chicken nuggets.
But the judge who made that ruling is the son of a pro-Palestinian journalist, a very vocal journalist.
That's irrelevant, Carol.
It's not irrelevant at all. If you've grown up with a father who was pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel, it seeps into your head. So don't tell me that judgment. How could he? I don't know how he could justify.
I mean, look, I don't think that people should be held responsible for their relatives anyway, or you know, that people are.
We're not saying they should be held responsible. I'm saying influenced by.
Fine. Well, look, I mean, a judge is a judge and has been elected has been appointed on merit.
No, he hasn't been elected.
Well, no,
Wrong choice of word. And that is the point.
But
this is the point.
We don't elect our
judges are not elected by us. We can sack a politician if we want to. We can kick them out. We can get rid of them if we don't like what they're doing. But judges are now dictating immigration.
Well, I don't think that we should have a system where judges become party political and where they are subject to election anyway. But I think that's one of the major things that's wrong with the United States.
This judge, in his judgment, allowing this woman who's on a 9th asylum application, conceded she did not share the political views and aspirations of this political group.
So why did he let her stay?
So why did he let her stay? Because he knew it was a ruse to let her stay here. I mean, it makes it even more of a mockery, John. That is in the judgment. He knows she did not share the political views of the terror organisation. She joined it because then it was a great way to say, I can't go back.
Well, I think we should point out that it's not prescribed as a terror organisation in the UK.
But it is in Nigeria.
It is in Nigeria.
It is in Nigeria.
So she can't go back.
Well, look, I can't...
It's gaming the system.
I can't comment necessarily on individual judgments. You know, we didn't sit through...
Why not? It's on the front page of the paper.
Yeah, exactly.
All the evidence. What I am saying is that clearly... we have an asylum system that needs reform. As you know, I am in favour of migration. I think that it's important that people should be allowed to claim asylum. I also think that economic migration is fine, by the way.
2 million displaced Gazans, they have a right to claim asylum.
Having said that, there are going to be some asylum claims that do not meet the criteria for asylum.
Well, none of them did. The chicken nuggets guy did. There's the Pakistani paedophile guy. He said his justification for doing this to kids, grooming kids, was his wife's illness made him do it. And the court swallowed that little tosh and allowed him to stay.
Also,
the bloke with the chicken nuggets.
What war was this Nigerian woman avoiding in Nigeria?
Well, exactly.
Well, you're aware of the Biafran War. And
she wasn't in it.
No, but there is still a major independence push for Biafra.
That's when I was at the junior school, the Biafran War.
I know that.
A very long time ago.
Right, but it doesn't mean the situation...
Sadly.
It doesn't... Well, as we know perfectly well, Andrew, situations don't...
There's no war in Nigeria.
Invite the world into Britain, then, because there's been a war somewhere in the last 20 years, somewhere in the world.
Was 50 years ago, Malone.
No, it's not. I'm not making an argument about that. I'm saying that there are people who are fighting for Biafran independence in Nigeria.
Isn't the problem that when you get these individual cases, as Carol said, the Telegraph have been picking them off one by one.
Well.
These individual cases spoil it for everybody that might have a genuine reason to be here, and they might make a good contribution to British society. But this, when you've applied 8 times, you're just taking the mick.
Yeah, there should be a limit. A limit on how many.
I completely,
3 times max.
Or once and one appeal.
Hang on, let Jonathan.
I completely accept the argument that in any system there are going to be some people who try and game the system or abuse it, and who don't have a legitimate claim to the thing that they're trying to get, whether that's benefits or asylum or anything. But it doesn't mean that the entire system needs to be knocked down.
Yes, it does.
Means that,
it's a terrible system.
It doesn't. It means that there is a minority
the
of bad
immigration
faith
system in this country is now being abused every day of every week. It's not in the best interest of the people of this country. Kemi Baden-Hock, this is part of the same story. She said yesterday in the Commons, we have to put our national interest first. That's going to be really hard when we have an Attorney General who has said publicly he will not argue with or overturn any
International Court
EHCR ruling.
I know.
Which means that all of the cases we're talking about, the nuggets, the paedophile, they're not going to be chucked out.
Well,
There's not going to be any challenge to that ruling.
I think it's completely legitimate to say that if we follow a court, then we have to follow its rulings. Otherwise, what's the point of being in the court?
Well, it shouldn't be in it.
This is set up by Winston Churchill. And by the way, Kemi Baden-Hock, on the front page of the Express, she asked Keir Starmer the same question 4 times. She is so useless. She has no idea what she's doing.
Seriously saying Winston Churchill would have been in support of this law
I'm saying
had he known how it was being abused today?
Into the court and the
because
council.
it was set up, it was for the most noble of reasons. Now it isn't.
I want to hear your opinions on this other story. Everyone's talking about it. Valentine's Day tomorrow and the launch of Bridget Jones, the last movie, Carol. The reviews are overwhelmingly positive. Obviously, none of us have seen it here.
I'm not going.
Are you a fan of Bridget Jones?
Huge fan of Bridget Jones. And I was trying to work it because it said that it's now overtaken the Barbie, the pre-bookings of Barbie.
Well, that was a terrible film.
It was a terrible film.
I love that
because
film.
it wasn't real. The thing about her is, and we're all growing older with her, and everyone's been through what she's been through. We've all been there. We're blokes. We're getting
Remind people what Bridget Jones went through.
Bridget Jones was started because of a journalist who
Helen Fielding.
Sorry?
Helen Fielding.
Yes, Helen Fielding. I was going to say it just because a minute. And who used to write for The Guardian and who wrote a book about her. So now this is the 4th film, and everyone is saying the first one was brilliant. Everyone's saying this is the best one since that. But it just charts her life stories. And we've all been there. Disasters with men, disasters with weight, disasters with jobs. I mean,
people dying.
People die, all that. And in this movie, apparently, there was one review, I think it was in your paper yesterday, Piers, just said, it's very funny whilst tackling very serious.
Yes, that's right. It was. Yeah.
Which is the greatest comedy. That's what comedy should be doing. Yeah. I'm very excited to see this. I have enjoyed a lot of the films.
I've got a confession. I've never seen the Bridget Jones film.
You're joking. You should watch them all.
I read the book.
She's great. She's great, and the supporting cast great. And I've got a friend, Rosie, who plays one of her friends this time, so I'm going to be extra pleased to see it. And also Leo Woodall, I'm sure, will be.
Oh, for goodness sake!
Now, is that the younger boy?
That's the younger.
Did you hear what he said last week? He said he can't use public transport anymore because he makes husbands jealous. I mean, he's quite bonny, but he's not Brad Pitt.
Yeah, he's not Brad Pitt.
Surely he had his tongue in his cheek when he said that, didn't he?
I had a go at him in the column, so...
Well, it might not be ideal viewing for Valentine's Day tomorrow.
Have you watched the films?
I haven't. I think I did years ago. I remember reading the first book and thinking that the character was a bit pathetic, actually. I thought all that obsession about her weight and all that, like the self...
Well, that's because you've never been a fatso like me. I completely sympathise.
Yeah, so you do relate.
I completely relate.
She probably was based on you.
But you know what? Yeah, I'm jealous of Piers never having seen the movie. You should watch them all together.
They are very funny.
How much sort of sympathy can you have for a woman who managed to get off with Colin Firth and Hugh Grant? Though, let's face it.
Well, and apparently in this one, Hugh Grant says, I wouldn't go out with you. Don't be ridiculous. You're too old now. You're practically a nun. She's in her 50s.
A nun.
So the age thing is quite a comedy theme throughout all of this.
That what too for you, Malone? Because she likes them young. She likes them young.
I don't like them young. I like my one boyfriend who happens to be a little younger than me.
Yeah.
Right. Moving on. San Francisco is...
No,
we're going to go to some breaking news
Munich.
now. Here we go.
More breaking news.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Another cloudy day ahead, occasional showers, but likely to see a few more brighter interludes compared to recent days, though it is still going to be remaining chilly. That's because we're still under the influence of an easterly flow across much of the country, making things feel chilly. That's away from the far southwest later, though, where we'll start to introduce some milder air. For many, though, there is still going to be plenty of cloud around, the best of the brightness across the far north and northwest of Scotland. But as I say, there should be some brighter interludes at times. That's away from the far southwest, though. We'll start to see thicker clouds spilling into parts of Cornwall, perhaps even some patchy rain later too. And temperatures just below average for the time of year, so it is going to be feeling chilly, particularly around any exposed North Sea coast where we see the brisk breeze. Now heading into this evening and overnight, thicker clouds starting to spill into parts of Cornwall, some patchy rain arriving later. Elsewhere it should be largely dry, plenty of cloud around, similar across Northern Ireland, a cloudy but dry end to the day. Still those clear spells clinging on to the far north and northwest of Scotland, so that's where it's going to turn particularly chilly, likely to see some frost overnight and some showers moving into the northeast of Scotland too, where they'll likely fall as snow across hills. Now, this area of rain will continue to push its way northeastwards, moving into parts of Northern Ireland, southern parts of Wales and the southwest, where we could start to see some snow as it falls across higher ground, maybe some freezing rain. So do take care for some icy stretches during the morning and still some clear spells as we head into the overnight period. So once again, there could be some patchy frost and some towns and cities just about dropping below freezing. So a chilly start for most as we head into Friday. Still cloud and outbreaks of rain slowly pushing their way northeastward. Still a chance we could see some freezing rain, so once again a risk of some icy stretches. But elsewhere, some patchy cloud, but likely to see more sunshine break through that cloud as we head into tomorrow. It is still going to be remaining chilly though, highs of around 4 to 5.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom. Andrew and Bev back up next. First, though, a look at the stories leading the news this hour. A car has ploughed into a crowd in Munich, injuring, now we know, at least 20 people, several critically, according to German police. Officers have sealed off the area and are urging people to stay away to allow emergency crews through to the scene. The driver has been detained and authorities say there is no further danger at this stage, but it is still unclear whether the incident was deliberate. Munich's mayor has also said he's been told children are among the injured, calling the incident deeply shocking. The crash happened just days before the Munich Security Conference, where world leaders, including Ukraine's president, are set to arrive. We will have plenty more updates and analysis on that incident in Munich with our national reporter, Charlie Peters. Figures released this morning show the economy unexpectedly grew at the end of last year, but GDP per head still fell. Growth between October and December last year was 0.1%, better than expected after stagnation in the previous 3 months. The data was compiled by the Office for National Statistics and is subject to revision. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has pledged to go further and faster with her plan to put more money in people's pockets, but the Conservatives accuse the Labour government of killing growth. The NHS waiting list in England has dropped for the 4th month in a row, now at its lowest level since April 2023. Figures show just over 7.4 million treatments were waiting at the end of December, down slightly from November's total and well below last year's peak. Long waits are also falling. Patients waiting over a year for treatment are at their lowest since 2020, but more than 2,000 people have been waiting over 18 months, a number that has barely changed. The government aims to eliminate year-long waits by March of this year and reduce them further by 2026. Well, breaking in the last half hour or so, news from the ASLEF union that passengers on the Elizabeth line in London are set to face major disruption as train drivers prepare for 4 days of strikes over pay. As Lev says, its members will walk out for 24 hours on the 27th of February, March the 1st, the 8th and March the 10th. The union accuses Transport for London of failing to offer a fair pay deal. It's, of course, the latest long-running dispute, with Londoners warned to expect severe delays. The Defence Secretary says there will be no talks about Ukraine without Ukraine's involvement, as John Healey insists Kyiv must be in a strong position to negotiate. NATO's General Secretary also says any peace deal must prevent Russia from trying to seize more land in the future. It follows Donald Trump claiming he and Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, have agreed to start talks on ending the war immediately. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at midday. Now, though, it's back to Andrew and Bev.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back, 11:36. Emily and Tom are here with us to tell us what's on Good Afternoon Britain today.
Goodness me, have you seen that Keir Starmer has been forced to cut his announcement, his visit, short because the farmers have all turned up and protested?
So this is,
he's had to abandon it.
Where is he?
Housing development.
The new towns announcement from the government today. They're trying to tie it all together. The growth figures are out. GDP up by just 0.1%.
Barely anything.
Per capita, the last quarter has been falling again. Per capita economic contraction. So the government wants to get building. They've announced that they're
that's why we've got this housing announcement today.
Fairly slowly, actually, with this housing announcement stuff, because they're saying that they'll start these new towns by the end of the Parliament. If they're only going to start these things in 4 years' time. Anyway, the whole point is
that as well.
He was visiting a development for this big announcement.
And the farmers turned up.
Boom.
Of course they did.
So there you go.
So
we're going to have a farmer on.
So he won't face the farmers?
Well, I think it's a really, really interesting situation because we're just getting some more information about sort of what precisely this protest was like. So we'll see all of that
There were
detail.
tractors involved.
Macmillan was asked what's the most difficult thing about government events, my dear, events. And that's happened.
Yeah. You know, there's supposed to be a big day. Keir Starmer and his team, Angela Rayner too.
The story will now be Starmer running scared of the farmers.
Yeah,
well,
I'm not surprised.
We'll also, of course, be keeping a close eye on what's happening in Munich. It seems like we're getting more information by the minute, really. I know you've been covering it. We'll certainly continue that story because this is the day before the Munich Security Conference, where world leaders are gathering in Munich. And it's also just 10 days to go until the German elections.
Absolutely.
This holds some...
And the German public, they must be terrified. I mean, how many times have similar incidents like this taken place? We don't know a motive. We don't know what's been going on in particular in this time. But, you know, people being rammed by vehicles seems to be becoming the norm.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just looking at this farmers story. It's a group called Farmers to Action, and it was a planned housing development in Buckinghamshire. And of course, Housing Secretary Angela Rayner said, "I will not run away from the tough choices to fix the housing crisis." But
she just ran away from the farmers.
This tweet from them says that Keir Starmer quite literally ran away from his own visit when confronted by farmers. And their slogan is "Abolish inheritance tax for all."
Fascinating. Well, we're going to have much more on that from midday.
Very good. Great. Right, Charlie Peters has joined us in the studio to tell us the latest from Munich, where we've heard about this awful event this morning. Charlie.
According to German sources at the Bild newspaper, they're saying that now a 26-year-old Afghan is the driver of the Mini Cooper that has been seen to have hit a group of demonstrators from the Verdi trade union, a left-wing group which is protesting for a dispute in the Bavarian city of Munich. So we're just being told, breaking news, a 26-year-old Afghan is the driver involved in this incident in Munich. This is an unrelated incident, but on the 22nd of January, we had a 28-year-old man from Afghanistan being arrested following an attack in another Bavarian city. A 2-year-old boy and a 41-year-old man were killed in a stabbing in a German park. Just to give some context of the concerns surrounding violence by foreign nationals, particularly from Afghanistan, in Bavaria in particular at the moment. But let's turn back to this incident. We understand that at least 20 people are injured following this car hitting people, being driven, it seems, by a 26-year-old Afghan. Ambulances are on the site. At least 2 people are said to have been very seriously injured. Bild newspaper, that very credible national newspaper in Germany, saying that a child's life is in danger. And we've also learnt from a regional newspaper, Süddeutsche, that they say that 1 woman has died and several others have been hurt following this incident. I haven't been able to verify that specific line of reporting coming from that regional daily newspaper. But the police have said on social media platform X that the driver has been secured. We now know a 26-year-old Afghan and no longer poses any danger. The incident itself, at about 10:30 local time, 9:30 GMT, the driver is said to have accelerated and then sped into these demonstrators on the Siedelstrasse, a main route in Munich leading northwest out of the city towards Dachau. Now, police investigations are now working to clarify whether he drove into this crowd intentionally or confused the accelerator and the brake. There have, of course, been several car ramming attacks in Europe over the last decade. They came into prominence after the Islamic State used them regularly, particularly in France and Germany, as that terror group came to prominence in Iraq and Syria, and they called on lone wolf attacks on the continent. There's no suggestion at this stage that this is a terrorist attack. No official reports confirming that, but it does fit with a pattern of this sort of criminal activity we've seen so regularly, and in particular in Germany, still reeling from a car ramming attack at a Christmas market towards the end of December. Also, according to Bild, that national newspaper in Germany, shots were fired beforehand, though we cannot verify this at GB News. Eyewitnesses saying that police may have shot at the windscreen in order to gain access after the vehicle had come to a halt. But the German police have now confirmed that it was a 26-year-old Afghan, reaffirming what Bild newspaper were reporting in the last 10 minutes. And footage I've seen, just very quickly, footage I've seen of this Mini Cooper, the vehicle used in this accident, in this incident, the windscreen is severely damaged. Does seem to reaffirm the reporting that shots have been fired.
Tom was alluding to our elections, crucial elections in Germany coming up. If this does turn out to be a terror attack, this could have quite far-reaching implications for the vote.
Yeah, and there's already been so much anger after that stabbing attack I referred to towards the end of January, but that comes after a long list of incidents, least of all that appalling situation at the Christmas market in Germany towards the end of December. So, appallingly, it seems to be there's an incident like this every month in Germany at the moment. But the latest we're hearing, 20 injured, 2 of them seriously. Reports of 1 woman dead, and people were being found underneath this Mini Cooper after emergency services arrived on the scene in the Siedelstrasse in Munich this morning.
All right, that's Charlie Peter, our national reporter.
Awful. Now, in this country, we've been asking this morning whether you feel safe with drivers around. 90 miles an hour on 30 mile an hour roads in the UK have been recorded. The highest recorded speed on any road was 167 miles an hour on a stretch of the M1 in Leicestershire.
And in South Yorkshire, 1 driver was caught doing 122 miles an hour on a 30 mile an hour limit road.
We're joined now by former racing driver, broadcaster and motoring journalist Amanda Stretton. Good morning, Amanda. Great to see you, as always. These numbers are extraordinary, aren't they? They're really shocking. You will have driven at 122 miles an hour on a track, but you would never dream of doing it in a 30 miles an hour zone. Are we clamping down hard enough, do you think, on people who get caught doing those sorts of speeds?
That's a really difficult question. And I think the answer has to be probably no. It's incredible. I was absolutely dumbfounded when I read this report. But I think we actually probably need to dig deeper into the numbers and to who the people are and at what time of day that these incidents have been recorded, because I think that's actually going to give us a bigger picture as to what's actually going on here. Because like many people, I'm sure, across the country, I've seen shocking driving in built-up areas and around schools, but generally this happens at night, and it generally seems to be younger people who think this is fun. We need to know more about the data, really, to get a clearer picture.
But I know any car you could drive on a British motorway could go as fast as 167 miles an hour. Why do we need speeds that fast? Isn't the speed limit 70?
The speed is 70, and you're right. I mean, this is a question that people have been tossing around for many, many years, for decades, in fact, ever since speed limits came into force. I mean, it's important that cars have power, and it's important that people have got the ability to overtake safely when they need to. And that is the sort of argument that's put forward by manufacturers when they're actually producing cars that can do these excessive speeds. However, you're right, the majority of cars that are on the roads aren't capable of going quite that fast, 70, 80, 90 miles an hour quite easily. And I think perhaps there needs to be something... But then people would argue that this is an infringement of their liberties. It's a really difficult question.
I don't see how it's an infringement of the liberties, Amanda, if they're breaking the law to go that fast. How is that an infringement of their liberties? It's not. I don't think it should be within your civil liberties to be able to break the law and go double the speed limit of 70 miles an hour.
You're absolutely right. That is not. But the choice of being able to buy a car, that is a free choice. Yeah. And also, one can only speculate. Many people who have high-performance cars actually like to do track days in them. But they do, therefore, need to have a car that has got the ability to drive fast and at its full potential. So, as I say, it's a really difficult question. But fundamentally, there is no excuse for speeding. So, I mean, that is the absolute underlying point here. And like everybody, I'm just shocked that people have been caught doing these ridiculously excessive speeds in these 20 and 30 mile an hour zones. There is no excuse for that.
I think sometimes, Amanda, I do wonder whether something that's happened here is that there's so many roads in the UK now are 20 miles an hour. Even when it feels you're driving along a road, there's no schools, there's no houses, and you're still going at 20 miles an hour at maybe 6 o'clock in the morning without another car. That they are nonsensical in some instances at some times of the day, and therefore there is a collapse in that trust with the speed limits for some people, and they think, well, I'm going to ignore it there, so I'm going to ignore it on the motorway as well.
I think you must have been talking to London taxi drivers.
I do.
Many of whom are very frustrated by the 20 mile an hour speed limits on some of the main arterial roads. Yes, you're right. And I think this is just a general erosion of trust in what's going on the roads. You know, we pay our road tax, we pay our insurance. I was talking to somebody just this morning about an insurance problem that they're having where the insurance company isn't paying out the value of the car. You know, we do have a general erosion of trust, and I think that's also a very valid point.
Yeah. Great. Lovely to see you, Amanda Stretton there. Now, in response to this, the Department of Transport has said there is no excuse for those who risk the lives of others through speeding. There are already tough penalties in place for those who speed. Up next, no beer cheer at the 2034 World Cup at Saudi Arabia, but do you need to have beer to have a good time? And you have to stay watching to see what the Saudi Arabia ambassador said about culture. You do not want to miss it. First, though, winter sun forecasts. Enjoy.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
We have some heavy thundery rain affecting eastern parts of the Mediterranean at the moment. Meanwhile, there is also a band of rain pushing in from the west tomorrow, affecting parts of Madeira later on and pushing into the far west of Spain and Portugal as well. Also some hefty rain affecting Italy, but it's around the Adriatic coastline where we're going to have some heavy thundery downpours, even some significant snow for Croatia in particular, with 10 to 20 centimetres even to lower levels. Elsewhere, a mostly fine story.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Michelle Dewberry and this is GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, after moving to the UK from Kochi in Japan over 25 years ago, our next guest missed the taste of home and started making sushi with local ingredients.
Yes, Tomono Davies went on to establish Tomono Sushi Party, inspired by her mother's dedication to cooking fresh meals every day.
Now, while sushi is usually enjoyed in restaurants in Japan, Tomono is showing that anyone can create it at home. So here we go. She's already taught over 500 people and is now bringing her passion to even more people.
So she joins us now in the studio to give us one of her sushi masterclasses. First of all, we're a little bit nervous. We're certainly not pros. I love eating sushi, but certainly not making it.
As long as you follow my instruction, it should be that easy.
OK, great. That's what we like to hear.
So tell us a little bit about your business and why we're here today.
Of course. So, my name is Tomono Davies. I'm originally from the place called Kochi, as you mentioned, and I'm the founder and the owner of Tomono Sushi Party. So we bring authentic, hands-on sushi making classes to homes, offices in London and home counties. Also, we run public classes, the information which you can find on my website.
Yep.
So this goes all the way back in 90s, actually, when I was a student.
Never.
The Japanese food wasn't widely available, but I really craved a beautiful, aromatic aged sushi, Japanese food. And when you're craving something, you started making your own at home. And I fell in love with the Englishman. He brought me back to UK. Then that's the time more people start asking me, can you teach me how to make sushi?
The People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So there will be no alcohol at the 2034 World Cup, according to the Saudi ambassador. He had this conversation with Nick Ferrari on LBC. Have a listen.
No alcohol. So the entire experience of the Saudi World Cup, from the get off the plane, in your hotel, in the stadium, in the restaurants, in the coffee shops, will be alcohol-free.
Rather like our weather, it's a dry country. Everyone has their own culture. And we're happy to accommodate people within the boundaries of our culture, but we don't want to change our culture for someone else.
Can we start applying that rule here? Can we?
It was a
no respect to Ramadan?
Powerful statement there from the Saudi ambassador. When you come to our country, you respect our rules. Well,
extraordinary.
I know. We might be talking about it a lot in the run-up to 2034. We've got 9 years to talk about that, Andrew.
How did they allow the World Cup to go to Saudi Arabia, having had, what was it?
Qatar.
The World Cup as well.
World Cup in Qatar. And in Qatar, they could drink in the hotels, but they couldn't drink
money.
anywhere else.
Money talks loudest.
And let's see, by 2034, nobody might be drinking any alcohol anyway.
One rule for one.
Thank you for joining us on Britain's Newsroom this week. We've enjoyed it. We hope you have too. Here are Emily and Tom.
Do stay with us here on GB News. We'll be live on that situation in Munich. More information coming in all the time. The number affected rising, and more information on the Afghan perpetrator.
Yes, and in the last few moments, Keir Starmer has been forced to escape a visit to a housing development because the farmers turned up in their tractors. We'll bring the latest on that rather noisy protest. All of that to come after your weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm here with your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. You may actually see a bit of sunshine today with a greater chance of some cloud breaks compared to recent days, but there will be a few showers around. The showers don't look particularly heavy and most of us will actually avoid these, so staying largely dry, and like I said, there will be some sunny breaks, especially across northern western parts of Scotland, western parts of Wales, but even elsewhere some breaks in the cloud are possible. Towards the southwest we are going to see the cloud actually increasing here and the winds picking up later as well. But otherwise, temperatures, well, still a bit disappointing for the time of year. And if you are stuck under that stubborn cloud, then it is going to feel chilly indeed. Later on, and as we go through this evening, like I said, some clearer skies through the daytime across parts of Scotland, and these will lead to a largely clear start to the night. And where we get clear skies overnight, a frost quite likely to form. So turning quite quickly chilly here. Meanwhile, where the cloud lingers across parts of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern England, it is going to stay that little bit milder for a little while yet, but some clear breaks are going to develop as we go through the night. Meanwhile, towards the southwest, the Isles of Scilly, the tip of Cornwall, we are going to see some rain pushing its way in. Then overnight, that rain towards the southwest pushes across parts of Cornwall and Devon and also into Northern Ireland. Could see some freezing rain, a bit of snow in association with this. Otherwise, and away from eastern coastal parts, there will be some clearer skies than we've seen through recent nights, so greater chance of temperatures dropping below freezing, and so a greater chance of us waking up to a bit of frost, even some patches of fog or freezing fog first thing tomorrow morning. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, and a bit wet across parts of Northern Ireland, still a bit of hill snow and some freezing rain possible. Also increasing amounts of cloud and rain across parts of Wales and the southwest of England. Some cloud lingering across the far east of England and Scotland too, but in between we have some brighter and drier and sunnier weather to be had. That being said, temperatures not rising a huge amount, so still feeling chilly. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're doubling your chances to win in our latest Great British giveaway with 2 fabulous prize bundles up for grabs. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16 along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. And the best news is 2 lucky winners are going to win. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. 1 entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Thursday, the 13th of February. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
At least 28 people injured, several critically, and perhaps one dead as a car ploughs into pedestrians in Munich, just a day before a major security conference begins in the city.
Yes, live shots here from Munich as police have now confirmed the man arrested is a 26-year-old Afghan asylum seeker, adding the incident is a suspected terror attack. We'll have the very latest.
Elsewhere, the Prime Minister has been forced to abandon a Buckinghamshire visit due to a farmers' protest, with some sounding musical horns while the Prime Minister spoke to workers at the site. We're speaking to farmers throughout the show. Was this protest move justified?
And elsewhere, we'll bring you the shocking story of a Nigerian woman who tried and failed 8 times to secure asylum in Britain. Well, she joined a terror organisation just to boost her claim, apparently. It truly beggars belief.
Throughout the show, we're going to be on the ground in Munich, piecing together what has gone on here on the most significant street in the city. A car ploughs into a group of people. The number affected has been rising as we've been learning more about this incident. But crucially, Munich is playing host to the Munich Security Conference, an annual event. It's going to be attended by J.D. Vance. It's going to be attended by Volodymyr Zelensky. World leaders from around the world will gather, as they do each and every year in Munich, to discuss matters of global security. Could this have been a symbolic move on the eve of that conference?
Yeah, we know the police have said that the driver of the car which crashed into these people, we now know 28 people at least have been injured, at least 2 seriously. That's what the police are saying. The driver is a 24-year-old Afghan nationals. Officers treating the incident as a suspected attack. So it sounds as though this was, well, intentional to harm.
It's so hard to piece together everything at this stage. We know what we've seen, but of course there's a lot yet to be seen. Throughout the show, no doubt we'll be learning more about this suspect, and we should expect German authorities to be releasing more information too. We're sticking with this story. Do stay with us too, and of course have your say. gbnews.com/your say. That's all to come after your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Thank you very much, Tom and Emily. A look at the other stories making the news. We will, of course, get plenty more on what's coming out of Munich later this hour. Here, though, meanwhile, figures released earlier today show the economy unexpectedly grew at the end of last year, but GDP per head still fell. Growth between October and December last year was 0.1%, better than expected after stagnation in the